Go ahead and call the meeting for the Village of Essex Junction Board of Trustees for Tuesday, July 13th to order. Thank you all for joining us as we try this hybrid approach to meeting. Hopefully this will go well. We won't have any technical difficulties. If you do, please bear with us. So do we have any agenda additions or changes for tonight?
No.
Trustees?
Yeah, Andrew, I would like to move one of the letters we got from the reading file, the letter from Peter Furkey, out just for a brief discussion. I thought it was kind of an interesting suggestion that he made, and I don't know exactly where to move it. I'll leave it up to you in a way. We could move it to and just sort of touch on it in business item A, because it pertains to separation, or if you wanted to separate, I'd leave it at your discretion.
I think we can just add that into the work session material.
Okay.
And just make sure that we address that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Dan, anything from either of you?
No, thanks.
Nope, all set.
Great. Seeing none, could I get a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, George. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Any opposed, say nay. So that was unanimous. Thank you. And now we will go into public to be heard. So this is a portion of tonight's meeting where if there are comments from individuals in the public about something that's not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. For those of you on Microsoft Teams, please bear with us as I'm going to prioritize those in the room as I can physically see them, and that's just frankly easier. So for those of you on Teams, please go ahead and raise your hand. If you are on the phone, I will also call on you at that point in time as well. And for those of you in the audience, I would also just say, please be prepared to only speak once. Please be brief, as we do have a lot to cover tonight. And please don't expect a solution, but rather to present the information to the board. So for those in the audience, is there anything that anybody had that you wanted to present to the board? Okay, seeing nothing of those in the audience here. Anybody on Microsoft Teams? I don't see any hands up. So just again as a reminder, make sure to raise your hand if you'd like to speak to the board about something that is not on the agenda. As I'm seeing no hands in Microsoft Teams, for those of you on the phone, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself if you wish to speak to the board about something that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. And just go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay, not hearing anybody from the phones. No hands are going up. So we will go ahead and move off from public to be heard and jump into business item 5A, the work session on Essex Junction Independence Initiative. Hello, Brad.
Good. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Nice to see you physically.
Nice to see you. Yes, it's good to be in person. I'm gonna try and get this up on the screen.
We got it.
It's thinking.
Yeah.
Anyways, tonight's I'll just give a preview and then we'll take comments. So tonight we're going to talk about contract options for services. We're going to talk about the police department contract and the goals that the trustees have in developing that. We're going to talk briefly about sales at some point along the way. What are some initiatives or directions that the trustees would like to take? We'll hear from Elaine Haney about our Village, Our Voices. And then we're going to look at the meeting schedule and discuss the summit concept. And there will be further discussion about contract with the town. And we're not sure yet if that's going to be an executive session or not.
Great. And if we could maybe put in as F the email from the last name Furkey, I forget the first name, that gentleman, and I believe the issue is about the name of the entity of the city.
That's right.
So if we could add that as the F, and then the F would then go to G for the executive session. So with that in mind, what we've been doing as the work session is this is the opportunity for the community to talk to the board and provide information to the board on those topics. Once we end that portion, we are not taking more public comment on those topics for this meeting. So this is that one opportunity to talk to us about those concerns. And again, I'll go to the room first. If there is anybody in the room physically who wishes to speak to any of those items, now would be the time to do so. If I can see a hand to see if that involves anybody. Okay, seeing no, then we can go into Microsoft Teams. So those of you on Microsoft Teams who wish to speak to the board about our items in the work session, now is the time to do so. Please go ahead, raise your hand to let me know that you wish to speak to us, and I will make sure you have the time. So I'm not seeing any hands going up. So those of you on the phone, if you wish to speak to the board about something, about the topics that we had just shared in regards to the work session, now is the time to do so. Please go ahead and unmute yourself on the phone and let us know your name, and we'll go ahead and make sure you have time.
How do you unmute? You mute yourself? Yeah. Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Hi, this is Polly Giancola,
Hello, Polly. Why don't you go ahead?
and, my concern is the senior center. Is this the time I can talk about the senior center?
The senior center is going to be 2 items after our work session. So our work sessions are typically lasting about an hour and a half. So if that's what your concern is for tonight, if you want to do other things for about an hour and a half or so, that would be perfectly fine.
Okay, will do, and we'll go back on,
Great. You're welcome to stay.
okay? Oh, okay, all right,
And I believe,
we'll stay.
and I believe there was a second person on the phone who wanted to talk as well.
Yes, my name is Paula Sargent. I also wanted to talk about the senior center, so I will come back on.
Okay, great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Down here.
Anybody
I don't
else
know
on the
what-
phone who wishes?
Yeah, Bernie Haslam. I also want to talk about the senior center, but I'll check in later. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time for anybody on the phone who wishes to speak to the work session items.
A lot of interest, huh?
Right, I think we can go ahead and move off of the public input portion for our work session. Back to you, Brad.
Great. Marguerite, I'm not able to share my screen. Would you be able to share? There's not really going to be a lot of jumping around. We're just on the bottom of page 3 of the packet. So the first order of business for the work session was just to kind of review the contract options as we start to explore contracting for, with the town for police services and also some other considerations. So if you recall back, I think it's from our June 8th session, we talked about there are really 3 different choices. There's interlocal contracts, there's union municipal districts, and there's an intermunicipal police service agreement. So those would be the 3 mechanisms. There was, I apologize, I put this information back in the packet, but there were some pretty good PowerPoints in there that kind of got into the weeds a little bit, which I thought was helpful, in particular about interlocal agreements and union municipal districts. I don't see much of a difference between an interlocal contract and an intermunicipal police services agreement. They're essentially the same thing. It's just the legislature decided at one point to just call out police services specifically. But I think all of the pieces and parts that you read about the interlocal contracts, I think, are applicable to the police services agreement.
This is good.
So
Right.
it's kind of the lay of the land. I think it was just then open for discussion about if there was a particular approach in general or a general approach or a particular approach for certain services that you all wanted to use.
And I think that a part of this conversation may bleed into the overall topic of whether we wanted to go into an executive session to discuss the contracts with the town of Essex. If anybody feels uncomfortable on the side of trustees, please raise that if I get too far into that concept. For me, one of the reasons why I asked for this to be brought back up is based on some feedback that I know I had seen both in social media and on email, that when we talk about sharing of something, these are the options we have. So when we're talking about sharing of, let's say, parks and recreation or some portion thereof, such as senior services, only as an example, what we're talking about is contracting through the
Excuse me.
yeah.
There's somebody that isn't in Teams and it's causing some problems. Can we ask them to?
I just muted them, the one who popped up. Yeah.
Oh. Are we all set now?
Keep unmuting. So maybe that, maybe just make it known.
You just gotta wait.
So
I've muted her.
So if you're if you're attending the meeting and you have not muted yourself, please do so. We're getting some feedback, which is getting very disruptive. So please go ahead and mute yourself. We have tried a couple of times, and you have unmuted yourself then. So please keep yourself muted if you're not.
You should be on speakerphone right now.
So that person speaking now would be a
I think there's a
person-
problem with the feed coming from
Star 6.
2 Lincoln Street.
So if you could go ahead and mute yourself, that would be greatly appreciated. And
If you can hear me, Andrew, there's a problem with the feed coming from 2 Lincoln.
Dan, what is it you're hearing, if you don't mind?
Nothing.
They're not hearing anything. Can you hear me now? Hello?
I'm gonna tell you, I'm very, very concerned about the life of the senior center.
Muting, muting.
Want me to kick them out? Hate to do it, but.
No, I wonder if they could even hear you or if they just muted themselves by accident that time. I don't know.
We were.
I muted them. Oh, right.
You might have muted us.
There you go.
We're unmuted.
We're unmuted now. Dan, Amber, can you confirm you can hear us?
Yep.
Sweet. Thank you, Dan.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. So just as a reminder for anybody who is attending the meeting, please make sure you are muted unless you are called upon, until you are called upon. Otherwise, that is what happens, and it becomes very distracting. So I don't know what the people not in the audience heard, so I'm just going to start that portion over again. The reason why I asked for this to come back onto our agenda is to make sure that the community understands when we're talking about sharing of services, what we are talking about is a union municipal district or having an interlocal contract. The exception to that is for police services, which is pretty clear in state statute that there is one option for police contracting of services. So with that, when we talk about sharing, that is what we are talking about. What have to be pretty well spelled out and clearly articulated agreements or contracts between the village, or at that point in time, the city of Essex Junction, and the other municipality. So we are not necessarily talking about, we're not really talking about anything besides that. Hopefully that helps to clear up any confusion or concerns that may have been shared to the board about that effort. So do we want to, if the board is okay, maybe what we can do is we can leave that portion there. And then when we get into the specific details of contracting with the town of Essex, we can leave that for the executive session.
Sure. I'm fine with that.
Does that work for
Yep, I'm
trustees?
fine with that, yep.
Amber, Dan, you good with that?
Good.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Great. Think we're set with A.
Okay, great. So the next is, the police department contract, and I think it's, up to you all if you want to discuss some goals, some general goals right now in public, or if you feel that that would be better accomplished in the executive session. Basically, the question would be, what are the most important components to developing a long-term contract with the town of Essex for police services? And so, some of that is going to need to be negotiated, and so you could decide whether or not the premature disclosure of that information is harmful in any way or not.
Speaking only for myself, while I know we can talk about this in executive session, I think that it would be a good show of good faith for not only our work with the select board, but I think also with the community as a whole, if we were to talk about this in an open session instead of in executive session. That may put us at a little bit of an undue or an unfair advantage or disadvantage. But honestly, I think that for community building efforts, I think it's well worth the risk. Other trustees have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. I think that I look at all the possible contracts and services with chair, and I think I look at them and look at what would it take if suddenly that contract were disrupted? How disruptive would that be? And obviously, the police department is a completely different dimension. You can't just replace your police service the way you can or the municipal services. And I think for a sense of security and stability, I would say that's what we're looking for. We're looking for whatever kind of contract. And I think I have to imagine the select board and the town would be equally motivated as well for that. So I think I don't think anyone wants to play politics with that particular point. So I'm perfectly happy discussing this in public. And I think whatever it is, we want to go for the maximum stability of our whatever agreement we have with them.
Great. Dan, Amber?
I'm fine discussing in public.
I'm fine with it as well.
Okay.
So to that end, see within it are not only the services related to law enforcement or policing, but also dispatch services and the community justice center. I see those as very integral to the success of the city. In terms of and inclusive of that, of course, would then be the fact that we as a village help to pay for the facility that's currently there. So I would assume then that we would also help to maintain the building, the police facility, that we would be stewards of that. In regards to the oversight of it, to me that goes down the path of whether we're having a contract or a union municipal district. Again, the state statute in my mind is pretty clear as to what our options are. So the way I see it is we're going down the path of an interlocal contract for police services. At some point, if as a part of that, there's a desire to talk about a study for a union municipal district relating to law enforcement and or public safety as a whole, maybe that's something that could be talked about with the select board. But in terms of our more immediate concerns, I would be looking for a long-term contract for police services. Yeah.
Great. What are some other things that people want to see incorporated?
In terms of the police contract or
Yes.
other contracts? I only add on to what Andrew said. I think a union municipal district or anything, any action that requires a vote would kind of present a complicated wrinkle. If you're if you're talking about having a vote for voting on a separation charter and then another vote also for which both sides would have to vote on to create a union, I think you're asking for trouble by having too many votes at one time. So I would say, in my mind, probably the most predictable route would be to go with a contract. And then, as you just said, if we thought that further down the road with the select board creating a union municipal district or something like that, that would require a vote and a charter change or something like that. That's something that could be discussed long term.
Agree with that, thank you. Raj, Dan, Andrew?
I guess the only thing I would add then would be to accommodate the process that's already started with the equity and group in terms of, I don't know what they're going to come up with. I don't think anyone knows what they're going to come up with, and I say the chief is on that task force as well. And so I just want to make sure any contract we come up with leaves room for that accommodation, which I'm sure it will. And I think I was probably the one that brought up oversight. And I don't know that we can accomplish having any kind of joint oversight in an interlocal contract I think long-term, and I think the chief asked the question in his feedback, you know, what isn't working? And I don't have anything to say that things are working. It's just that if we're going to be two communities, fairly different needs, it would be nice to not have to rely on a board that's not in our community. It's not having our same experience to relay our desires back to the police chief. It'd be nice to have some kind of role in that. I'm very open to what that might be. It might simply be some kind of beefed up, you know, citizen panel. You know, I don't have a specific model, but I think going the contract route right now, keeping the relationship, keeping the stability, allows us later to kind of really explore that when we have time.
And you can have an advisory group with an interlocal contract. You can have appointed members from both boards. So all of that is feasible in this first contract, or you can write it in to explore later.
Okay, that would be cool.
I think the concern for, and sorry, Dan or Amber, I didn't see your hand up, so I'm just going to go for a moment. I think the concern as far as oversight really came from a year ago when we ended up leaving a virtual meeting because we as a board were told we were not allowed to participate in a conversation relating to policing and relating to receiving feedback from the community, which helps to create, in some ways, the equity groups that we currently have. And so as long as we can avoid that scenario from happening again, then that's what I believe, that's for me, what I'm talking about when I think of oversight, is ensuring that we as a municipality have say and some level of control over the ordinances and feedback from the community on the services that we are paying for and providing for our community. Whether that be through a contract and through the language in a contract or some other form. I think that's one of the important parts of the oversight. One of the other concepts or concerns is about the budget and how that would be paid for. What I would hate to see is for any kind of a fee for service or some kind of a utilization cost where the village or the city ends up being assessed on a per call basis. Police and public protection as a whole are sort of safety nets for our community where whether you use it or not, you have access to it. So simply because one person calls for it and someone else does not, regardless of where they live, should not necessarily impact how much the community pays. Especially given how growth patterns are going, what may be the scenario today, it could be vastly different in 5 to 10 years. And so we don't want to necessarily be locked into something like that. If it's something that is reviewed on a regular basis through something that is more formulaic, like the grand list, that would, I believe, also help to provide some consistency, some reliability for the budget building process.
Andrew, can I jump in and just convert, since
Yeah.
we're not used to the informality of live meetings, so I'm going to jump back, try to get us back there. I have to assume that the breakdown of the budget, in terms of a contract, would be on the basis of grand list. We'd look at the total grand list and then proportion village, proportion town. Do you have something else in mind?
That's exactly.
So I think that's what we have in mind.
Yeah.
I can't think of another way you'd do it other that wouldn't make it really complicated really fast.
I believe in the memo we saw from the police chief, either last meeting or the meeting before.
Right.
I thought that was something that he had raised, or it was a part of some other conversation thereof. And I just wanted to make sure that when we talk about it, it's clear that it's not what we're talking. We are talking about the grand list, and we're not talking about some kind of fee for service or paid on call type scenario.
Right.
So I can't see your hand.
It's
going to be tough.
So the thing that I would say is you don't want to do fee for service. You don't want to sit on call volume, because at any given time, a property could be in distress and make 10 calls or 30 calls. By the way, the police building is in the city of Essex Junction. So when you go to the police station and file a report, it would show up in the system that it was filed in the city. And whether you're a resident of this city or Burlington or somewhere else, it'll show that it was filed here. So you don't want to do that. You will want to look at things that are stable or generally stabilizing. Maybe there's 2 or 3 or 4 things that go into the agreement as for cost, but that are not volatile. In terms of making your 1 year go up, the next year go down, and then you're playing yo-yo. So you want things that are generally predictable, generally happen every year. So if you're going to do the 4th of July, it's going to happen every year. You're going to do a particular parade, it's going to happen every year. That kind of gets put into a formula. You want, generally you want the patrolling of neighborhoods and a response time and dispatch of your public works, the wastewater treatment plant, and I think there's one other department that gets dispatched to the fire department. Those services wrapped up into the police services, and so back to predictability, because obviously you don't want a yo-yo effect.
Could I just add another thought? We have an example with the Tri-Town Commission that operates the water treatment plant. It's owned and operated by Essex Junction, but Essex Town, Essex Junction, and Williston all have representatives, and they set the rates and the fee schedule, and have generally provide a kind of a regulatory oversight of the whole thing. And I don't know by what legal mechanism that the commission was set up, but whatever it is, that might be a good model. Maybe it can't be. Maybe it's got something to do with Agency of Natural Resources or permits or something like that. I don't know, but it might not be a bad idea to sort of look at the guts of that and see how that works. That's been working extremely well for many years.
That's a good suggestion. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what has been said so far, pretty much as a whole. To speak to Evan's comments about the cost of services and such, obviously one of the big things for the police department every year is the fair, and any event at the fairgrounds, which is in the city, so-called future city of Essex Junction. So that would be a heavy burden on services for the police department. But that and any major crime, homicides or anything significant would take a lot of cost and police services. But anyhow, basing it on the grand list and divvying it up, I think is the best way to go forward.
Any other trustees on this?
Wondering.
Nothing to add.
Go ahead, Amber, sorry.
I was just saying I had nothing to add. You guys covered it all.
I guess I was wondering about ordinances and whether it would leave us in our effort to align. I would imagine we'd still want to align where possible. I guess that can be discussed later.
I think so. That would make sense to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It would be one police department, and I know in some ride-alongs that they've been pretty clear that they don't always know where the line is in a given moment.
And the last thing would be, I'd be curious to see, not tonight, but I'd be curious to see if they're in these agreements, how may not be a lot of examples in Vermont, but are there grants for public safety that apply to cities that don't apply to towns? And the reason I ask is we're seeing this weird ARPA distinction, right, from the feds with counties. I wonder in the contract how we make sure that we can get those and they were passed through to our community as the city, quote unquote, versus be spread out through the entire department.
That
big
a little on that about revenues. Just in general, with police matters, when a ticket is written, speeding or violations are written, revenues come back to the municipalities if it's a municipal violation. And it would come back to the municipality, particularly the city of Essex Junction, or the town of Essex, revenues that were written under statute pertaining to a speed zone or a violation in that particular area. So I'm sure that would all be worked out at the police department and through the state of Vermont. But I want to bring that one thing up.
Great point. Brad, have anything else that we haven't talked about you think we should with relation to this?
That's a pretty good start. I mean, I'm guessing this is the first priority of the joint meeting discussion with the select board, so at least we have something to provide them in advance so they can get that conversation moving. Yeah.
And I had one last point.
Yeah.
I believe, and Evan can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Community Justice Center is a pass-through from the state through the town to the community, to the Community Justice Center. I think that might be complicated trying to change that. So if you're going to continue to operate that, it would, yeah, go ahead. Am I right, Evan?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a Department of Corrections grant that comes to the town.
Right.
The town provides, I would say, all right, their grant probably covers about 90% of their operating costs.
Okay.
The town covers what the grant doesn't cover. We also provide service to Winooski through that grant. So their grant money now comes to us. We cover their person, et cetera, et cetera. So it's about 90%. The town currently pays a little bit of salary, a little bit of benefit that's not covered by the grant, and their rent.
Okay.
So it's
Okay. So
it's
that-
about 90% covered by grant,
Okay.
but the grant is not increasing, and therefore the local share is.
Okay.
But
So that's
it's
complicated.
it's manageable for right now. But that's a good point, and
Okay.
we the town considers the CJC as, I don't want to say part of the police department, they're just under the police budget.
Right.
And they're a function that's also supervised and integrated with the police services for certain reasons. Maybe not always the best, but that's where it is. And so that's that service.
Okay.
And back to the comment about grants, I think for Brad, if you're taking notes, probably what you're looking for is some type of shared revenue generated, that goes back into the pot. So, whatever we generate a year in tickets just goes back into the department budget / minus expenses, and therefore shared like that. And any grants or any monies that are seized that we get back from the federal government. Currently, if we do an arrest that has cash involved in it that's drug related, the DEA takes charge of that, and then eventually, supposedly, still waiting on it, they disperse funds. That should also be something that you guys should work on as to how that gets put into the mix.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good. I think we're ready to go to the plan B.
Great. So the next item is basically just talking about if independence fails. It's a really difficult conversation because it could fail in November, it could fail in January, it could fail in April. And so we don't really know at which juncture, but I think it'd be good just to start sharing some ideas about, what's possible. Mostly in thinking that, if it fails in November, you have the opportunity certainly to go back to the community in April. I mean, if you can figure out what went wrong. If it fails in the legislature, we're kind of back on this exact same timeline of if you want to do something again, you'd probably go back out in November. And so and then it goes back to the legislature the next year. So what'll happen is right now, at the quickest pass, is you'll develop the town and village, the FY23 budgets will happen before we know the outcome of the city. If it fails somewhere along the way, then you'll also have to develop the FY24 before any potential changes could happen. So I think it's worthy of just starting to consider what some of your approaches will be to those budgets and to the departments in general. And, you know, I again went back to the report from consolidated department heads who again feel like they're in the middle of, do we still keep consolidating and aligning things, or do we stop that because the future direction of the trustees and our select board is that we're actually going to unravel some of those consolidations, and the village is going to have, whether it's a city or a village, is going to have more departments. Those are just some of the conversations I think would be worthy of having.
For me, I think the answer does largely depend upon at what point in time does it fail. If it fails in November and the residents decide not to, then it's that conversation with the community of why, and try to learn from that. If it's that separation isn't tolerable or is not the desired solution, then we go down a different path. If it fails, though, from the legislative side of things, I would assume then that there is a technical, or there is some other type of resolution that we as a community would be able to come to fix that issue, and then go back again that subsequent year. And we'd be talking about, you know, just the charter process, as the overwhelming majority of the work we've already would have completed. So I think the plan B is really, if it fails, we're still here. We're still pursuing how to become an independent city of Essex Junction. It has become clear that this is the path for us to be able to be the masters of our own destiny, if you will, or at least have the autonomy to do what we want and to be the independent community and make our own decisions. So as far as unraveling, yes.
Since you can't see her too.
No, I have a question.
Yes.
Just to that end too, and I think it's just that in the legislation, they might not give you an answer, right? Like that's the worst. The worst, like everyone knows, you go to the doctor, the worst thing is like there's no outcome to come from. So that I think is also just something, and it might be the same as if it were, you know, whatever. But I think that that's something else that, you know, comes up in conversations. Like how long do you sit in the unknown, and that we don't know, right? That's
Right.
the issue. So I think that was just something else to just have in your mind as you think about that. It's that.
Yeah, generally when a bill isn't taken up, there is a conversation as to why it hasn't been taken up. And if it's because of just technical complexity, if it's because of competing philosophies with the state, then those are pieces of information we can go back to the community with.
Right.
Right. It generally doesn't just hang out on the wall.
Just might not resolve for staff. Like, that's right, exactly. It's just being clear all.
And I say generally.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yes.
So I thought I heard the question, correct me if I'm wrong. So if independence fails, are you looking to continue to share current departments that are being shared, or are you looking to discontinue sharing, however slowly, fast, or otherwise? Or that's a question that is still out there.
So if the village tells us in November, the residents tell us through voting that no, they don't want to separate, then that tells me that why, if it's because separation isn't what they want, then that goes back to that question. If it passes in November, then again, the community has told us, yes, please separate and do what you need to do to make that happen.
Okay.
I mean, I would say it's really going to depend on what they tell us. It could be that they want to separate and discover maybe it's too expensive. Who knows? And so, you know, in the meantime, I see no problem continuing to work work on tax equity. I felt 2.5 years ago when I joined the board that any more consolidation or sharing while this process played out should be held, and it's fine wasn't. So I'm not sure I want to keep going down that road. I think there are ways to achieve some tax equity, because we're at least one, maybe two budget cycles out, and why not? It's going to depend on a case by case basis. If it's a disruptive change or a major change, and it's just going to be undone in the very next budget cycle, it may not be worth it. It's a really difficult question. So I want to work towards increasing tax equity. I just it's going to depend on what that solution is going to be, and whether it's worth the change, how big a change. And we'll find out in November, I guess. If the November vote is overwhelmingly positive for separation, I think that's going to signal to the legislature, and I think we may not have that much to worry about in the legislature, to be honest. So we'll have to see.
My feeling is, I think I agree with everything that's been said here. My message to staff would be, as it's always been, I would not want to see, certainly not have the village and also not the town lose good, valuable staff because of the political uncertainty at the top. And I know that from my mind, if separation is successful, they'll certainly, all the jobs that are needed, or all the positions that are needed here in Essex, in the village, are going to continue to be there. And I know there's been buzz that, wow, what will the town do? I've looked at Sarah Macy's numbers very clearly. The Essex town has one of the highest grand lists and some of the lowest municipal spending in Chittenden County. I don't realistically think that if separation is successful, that the town is going to cut its own throat, or cut its nose off to spite its face, or whatever the expression is. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this, but I'm fairly confident that jobs in Essex town will continue. I think the need for their services will continue. I think that it's politics that's been preventing this, and but I think that Essex Junction and Essex Town are both among the lowest spending communities in Chittenden County. We happen to have one of the highest tax rates, but that's politics. But and yet we are fairly well off. So I just don't see in either community, regardless of what happens, some big loss of jobs and positions. I think we need the talent. I think we all appreciate on both sides all the talent and skill and experience that we have. I don't see that changing. So I can't imagine being a staff member on either side and dealing with this uncertainty. My only message would be, try to dial it out. I think it's going to be okay, whatever happens. And that's what I would say. I mean, what we do if separation fails, it totally, as we've said, it totally depends on what happens, where it fails, and what was the reason. If it's some technical reason, if the legislature says we just don't want any more cities in Vermont, that's a very different thing than, well, there's some technical problem with your charter. So it's impossible for us to say, but I think we're in for a long 1.5 to 2 years of uncertainty. But I think all of the staffing needs that we have in the village of the town are going to still be there. That's my feeling.
And I don't have specific examples, and because we'd have to address them one by one, but in general, where and we know this better, there are junctures where decisions are made, and the question, you have kind of two options, right? You can go this way, which is going to be making a decision that's better for everybody, the town and the village, in a consolidated sense. Or sometimes you make decisions that are better for, like, you just look at it for the village, or you just look at it for the town and say that would be best for the town long term, or that would be best for the village. I think those are some of the examples of times in the next year or two where staff feel stuck. And so, I don't know if you can answer that generally without knowing a specific example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we're preparing for separation, and that really should be the mindset at this point in time. prepare for that.
You know, the only thing I'll jump in with that, I guess we should go to Dan and Amber, but one more quick thing. Any co-located departments that aren't bringing full funding to the budget should be rectified immediately in the next budget cycle. So I guess I would identify rec. If EPR is not bringing its full weight budget-wise to the party, I think that my expectation would be that this budget cover that, at least for as long as that situation exists. That's the only one I can think of that's predictable and existing at the moment.
Dan, Amber?
Nothing to add from me.
I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I think we'll know, like you said, Andrew, come November, what the result is, and probably before that, just with our meeting with the publics, or the public, I should say, and getting a sense of their feelings about the public.
Great. Anything else you want to make sure we address on that?
I guess I would ask Evan or Marguerite if they're in the midst of those conversations more often than not. I mean, what I've heard you say is, you know, and we didn't get to this exactly, but the last check-in you had with voters voted 74% to separate or to advise you to. Yeah. The next check-in is in November, and you're operating to prepare for separation, and would like to do everything in the meantime to support that. And, you know, additionally addressing tax equity in interim budgets would be a practice that you would want to take on. Yep.
I would recommend tax equity be something to be discussed, because again, the title of this particular section is If Independence Fails. Be clear, if independence fails, you're still a village inside of a town. You're still paying taxes to yourself and to the town. So equity was important 6 months ago. It was important, 5 years ago, as you guys started on that journey. So I would think that would still be important. I think just that, I've said this before, it's also very much about relationships. The relationship of the village to the town, and the village board to the town select board, and working together for the betterment of the, I hate saying two communities, because you're not. You're really one community, but has two separate municipality inside of it. So, but you do a lot of things together, and you do a lot of things together very well. And that's some of the things that I think, regardless of the outcomes, you should continue and find that way of working together. Because you will always need each other as neighbors.
Yeah. Let me, if I can just ramble a little bit. I agree with you, Evan. I think the relationships are good, but I think what you need to have is a common narrative, a common understanding of what the issues are. And I would say the challenge right now is to go, and I won't use the political, I'll try to use it. I think what we need is an evidence-based narrative, not a spin-based narrative or a history-based narrative or a political, but we need an evidence-based narrative. We need to look at actual total municipal spending in the village, in the town, tax rates. Forget the history, that's all prologue. Just look at the current issue. And so I think if we can start from there, that's a good place, a common basis for developing the kind of relationship you're talking about between the two boards.
Well, I'll give you that, but what I'm talking about as well is two boards that talk and communicate to each other.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
And respect each other and their providence and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do things just because your neighbor asked you to. You may not believe in it. You don't have to, but your neighbor asked, so you do it, right?
Yeah.
And then when the time comes and they ask, you may not believe in it, but you do it because a board asked you to do it. And that was their decision, so you respect it.
Yep.
Those types of things need to continue to go on in this interim period and past that.
Yes, I would agree. We need to be seen as equals and treated as such. Both ways.
I think Sarah had her hand up.
Thank you.
I don't know if Sarah still does.
Let's see. Dan, I see your hand up.
Hi. To speak to the whole thing of equity or two communities and the tax rates and such, the one variable in that whole scenario or the whole discussion is capital improvements and potential liabilities. The town liability never changes. The town is liable for the cost of the town itself. The village is liable for capital in anything in the village and in the town as well. So that aspect of this equation, of this discussion, is never going to change until there's something put in place to make that change. And that's the crux of a lot of the issues here, in my opinion.
Thank you, Dan. Sarah Macy, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I did. My video is a little bit spotty. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you just fine.
All right. I just, at the risk of going down a rabbit hole, I was hoping, Raj, that you would be willing to clarify what you meant by what you just said about recreation. As a person writing these budgets during this period of unknown, I can't hear you whispering, George and Raj. I see you.
I basically was saying I'm sorry I spoke.
No, I just.
So
I'm watching. No, I think what you meant was that you want to focus on tax equity in places where we're already consolidated, not new items, but really take a hard look at what's there. Am I correct in that, or was it something else? And if you,
what I meant specifically is Essex, is EPR being in Maple Street, contributing to Maple Street's capital expenses sufficiently? Are they contributing to the overall expense? Are they bringing their share? And I hate to, that sounds negative. I don't mean it that way, but are they bringing what they're using to the table? My understanding from the last budget cycle was no. They weren't currently, because we thought that this would rectify itself through merger. It hasn't, and the situation still exists, and we still have 1 or 2 budget cycles. So I guess my point is, it'd be great to address that one way or the other. I don't have any negative feelings towards EPR at all, but we in the village are paying for 2. So it'd be nice to, reduce that a little bit while we can. So that's all. I mean, the location's fine. Things seem to be working, but if they're going to do that, then perhaps the town could contribute more towards the presence there and the costs associated with those facilities.
That clarification helps me a lot. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I did ask, because we'll hit that in budget planning. Sounds like something for Brad and Allie's to-do list. So thank you, Raj.
Miss you, Sarah.
I'm right here.
All right, I think we are good with that item.
Great. So next up is Elaine to discuss Our Village, Our Voices.
Elaine, I know I saw you on there earlier. It's nice to have you join us. I assume you're still with us virtually.
I am. Can you see me or hear me?
I hear you. There you are.
Okay. I'm really impressed with the new setup and how it's hybrid. You guys are doing a great job. So, and thank you, Town Meeting Television, for that. So yeah, thank you for your time this evening. I just want to drop in and give you an update on Our Village, Our Voices. We are working steadily away on communicating with our residents and planning some really good things for them to do and learn about separation. So couple things I can share with you. Our first set of FAQs has been completed and posted to the Our Village, Our Voices website. And thank you very much to George Tyler for vetting those questions and ensuring their accuracy. And we are working on a second set of FAQs that we hope to post in the near future, as well as an additional set specifically for businesses to answer some questions that they might have about separation and how it might impact their businesses. We're beginning our outreach to residents. We have several upcoming events planned, and we're also piggybacking on other events that are happening in the community. For example, the concert at Maple Street in the next couple nights. We have two really fun events planned. One is on the 22nd. It's evening swim for Essex Junction residents at Maple Street Pool. We're closing the pool to the public and allowing Essex Junction residents to come in and have a fun time with us swimming. And then on Wednesday, July 28th, we will be descending upon Firebird Cafe for Essex Junction Trivia Night with free chips and salsa. So I would like to personally invite all of you to come to those events. Join us at the pool, join us at Firebird for some fun times. And we are continuing to work on outreach to neighborhoods. And I wanted to share with you some questions that we have received from residents as we've canvassed the area, asking folks if they're aware of separation and those kinds of things. So I just want to give you a little flavor of the questions that we're asking, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So people, and this is just general stuff, like what do people want to know more about? They're interested in hearing about what the cons are for the village if we separate. They want to know, how will things be different for villagers and taxpayers? What will change? Some folks wanted to know what our new name would be. They were just kind of curious. Still an enormous amount of confusion about the relationship between the town and the village in general, particularly how our taxation works and our services. Questions about the fire department. Will it still be the same? Will we keep our services level, at the current level, or will they change? How will separation affect our taxes? And can we get mail-in ballots? So those are just some questions. And we also had one person who is having some difficulty with place speak, getting in there and wondering whether his feedback that he posted has been acknowledged or even seen. So I'm not sure what the process is regarding place speak, but maybe a little bit more activity on that platform or some more explanation about how it works might be in order. That's really all I have for you at the moment. I know that Brad had reached out to me asking about coordinating some informational conversations, like community conversations in public places for the trustees to attend. And I'm happy to talk with you about how you might want to do that.
Thank you, Elaine. I know that in looking at the Our Village, Our Voices website and hearing some feedback at last night's select board meeting, it definitely seems as if you guys are doing a fantastic job at having that website and that presence to be able to help share this message. So I really do appreciate that. With your questions that you have, I appreciate the answers that George has been able to provide. Yeah. Keep those coming, and George, if you want to keep those answers coming, that's helpful too.
I can only take, I put some of the finishing touches on the questions. I can't take responsibility for the principal effort, but I'd love to, but I can't. So yeah, no. If Elaine, Gabriella, I think did most of it.
We just want to make sure that we are accurate and that we all are saying the same thing so that we're not confusing people. And so making sure that George, at the very least, has had a chance to look at them and make his comments has been hugely helpful.
With your question about the opportunities for neighborhood conversations, some of this may bleed a little bit into our next agenda topic, but if we just talk about it now, I'm fine with it. We originally have a village summit that's proposed for September 11th, and personally, when I think about what we've done in the past with large one-time events, we've done a pretty good job of getting the same people out that we regularly see at every event, which, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think of smaller neighborhood style conversations where we have been able to get many people to come out and provide input to directly answer questions in a more comfortable setting where those who may be more introverted or those who are less likely to talk in front of 100 other people are able to get their questions answered as well. Where personally, I think that kind of approach may be able to spread the message further and help to engage more people. So I was just curious about having multiple opportunities in small groups to replace this sort of village summit as compared to just one large event, say at the high school.
I think that's an excellent approach. We're finding that people are much more willing to chat one-on-one or in a small group of people they know. And I think you've hit on something important there. When we have a large event, we do bring in the same crowd, which is excellent because they're folks who are really engaged and who know what they're talking about. They've been following things and they have real specific opinions. But if we want to reach more people in the community and we want to make sure that the most people vote as possible, getting out to folks who aren't normally attached to what we do is a really important thing. I suggest, in addition to possible community conversations similar to what our legislators do, they hold them at Nest and they hold them at other places around the community, and they get people coming. There's two things that I would like to suggest. One is we are working on we're working on having neighborhood door-to-door people. So we have volunteers in lots of different neighborhoods who have agreed to go door to door. And so I think a lot of the outreach can occur that way, and having trustees with them as they go door to door would be a wonderful thing. And you have all stepped up to say that you will take care of that in your own neighborhoods, but also spreading out to other neighborhoods would be a good idea. And also having, I don't know if you recall during the election last year, Representative Houghton and Representative Dolan did neighborhood walking tours where they just said, we're going to be in Fairview Farms on Saturday at between 9 and noon, and we're going to be wandering through your community and we'll have cookies, and please come find us and we'll chat. I think those more informal approaches where they know you're going to be there, they can look out for you. I think a combination of those three things of community conversations, walking tours, and door to door would be super effective. You could still hold a summit. Some people will find value in that, but I think the more personal approach is more effective.
I think we're going to need to figure out which trustee is a better baker and have some cookies to go down. Yeah. You give it the cinnamon bun. And I appreciate that, Elaine. I think as well, if there are events or opportunities that you all do set up and you feel would be useful to have one or two of us there, please let us know. Happy to try and coordinate that. We do want to try and prevent the three of us from being in the same room at the same place talking about this. But just keep us informed as to that need, and we can figure out how to get someone there.
Absolutely. We'll keep you in the loop on that.
And Brad, the place speak, Elaine, there was a question about, was it the use of place speak, how that works? I know personally I saw it and didn't want to participate because I don't want to skew the results.
The person who made a comment was simply saying that they got into place speak and there wasn't much to see, and they did contribute in some way, and they're not sure that what they contributed was seen or acknowledged.
Great. Yeah, that's on the list of to get more information on there. So we'll get that up in the next week or so. Great.
Is there anything else that we can do to assist you in getting the message out, or should we just plan on moving forward with scheduling some community conversations?
I think you should plan on moving forward, and I hope to see you at the pool event and trivia.
I can't be at the pool, but I will be at the Firebird Cafe.
The trustees, any other thoughts on this?
We'll have to schedule the Firebird thing, so 3 of us aren't there. We'll have to figure that out.
No, I'm going.
Do know that you can attend social events
Yeah.
and not be considered a quorum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll be on.
Yes.
There we go.
Conduct no business.
Right.
That's right.
Show up in disguise.
Perfect.
Dan or Amber?
All good.
Thank you all for your hard work. We see how hard you're working and we see the effort you're putting into this, and we truly appreciate it.
Well, Elaine, thank you for all of your effort. We really do appreciate it. You're doing a lot of the work that I know personally is not within my skill set, so I greatly appreciate it.
We're happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think we kind of just discussed a portion of the next one, and we're going into the meeting schedule side.
Yeah, it seems like there's consensus on not, is there consensus, I guess, on not doing a large village summit and instead packaging that information and utilizing kind of Elaine's networks to maybe try and get that information out there. The intention, so the summit was going to be a culmination, a presentation basically of our villages, our voices, outcomes from the conversations they're having, to review the charter, review the budget, and review kind of the org chart. It would be an opportunity for people to hear all of those different things and then ask questions and then provide some feedback. Basically, probably 3 questions. What excites you? What concerns you, and what questions do you have? And so the question is, do we want to do that in one large fell swoop, or do we want to package that up and allow other folks to take that to their communities?
So I know part of the impetus for me personally also came from that date may not work for me, and so I was so there's that. But I do think that in having the smaller groups would allow for more personalized conversation. Granted, that may then mean a larger commitment from us to be at different places, or at least be at multiple places. But I think if we can commit to that, it would allow for a better result in the end. Up to the 4 of you to say otherwise.
I agree with you. I would only say maybe, since there's still time, maybe sort of see how things go, because maybe a large summit sometime in the fall might not be a bad idea to kind of refocus everything. I wouldn't say that you plan on as your principal effort, but maybe that wouldn't be, it would be something we could kind of see how things are going and see if we feel there's a need for it. I don't think we have to necessarily put it all together right now. We could put something like that together on a couple of weeks' notice, probably.
And I'm curious how that timing plays in. I don't have the calendar or proposed. Oh, look, it's right here. I'm wondering how that plays into timing for any public hearing. So September 11th would be 17 days before the first public hearing.
Yeah, so
and we'd have, go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. Right, so the intention of, the reason September 11th was selected is we start to get into a real definitive time crunch. If we're going to utilize these as not only opportunities to share information, but to gather information. Right. And so that's part of this idea, is that there's opportunity for feedback before you actually finalize and approve the charter. So the charter does have to be approved at your September 14th meeting. So we would come to that meeting and have a discussion, review the information that we heard, see if there's any final changes or tweaks you wanted to make before it gets filed.
It does look, though, on this timeline, like the last the last chance for charter revisions would be the 13th of October, 12th because it's our meeting.
Agreed.
Okay, so we would still have a couple public hearings to make adjustments, but So really, it's more of an access issue. Like, do we think people will, there'll still be a population of people that will only be able to get to that? I think, like George said, we can probably wait.
Yeah, I mean, how about the idea of possibly making your first public hearing a summit meeting? You know, combine the two. You're not necessarily looking for feedback, but you're looking for some sort of coherent message and answering other questions, lingering questions that people might have.
Well, that would certainly solve that September 11th time crunch and give us a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's only 3 days between that summit and when we finalize it.
Right.
So, I mean, if we think we can really pull off, you know, getting into the neighborhoods with some of these volunteers, then I think that'd be powerful. Yep. Much more effective.
Dan or Amber?
I was just gonna agree that with the original comment that George made to kind of hold off and see if we're able to hit all the neighborhoods, great, but I do think the summit might be a good idea, just to hit some additional folks. Sometimes more is better.
True.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. I think we can work with that, and we have some time. If we want to look at the meeting schedule, so there is now a joint meeting on the 26th of July, or the potential to have that joint meeting. In the previous iteration, there was not a scheduled meeting for July 27th, and so that's a question of whether or not you want to add that work session. And then a question of whether or not to add one on the 31st of August. I don't think we have to do that. I think, you know, originally we were thinking that on August 24th, the community conversations presentation would take up, you know, all of your time, and there wouldn't be time to then talk about what you heard and make any changes to organization, budget, or charter. I think that can all be accomplished. So I'd recommend we not schedule the August 31st. In terms of what's on the agenda for the 27th of July, so we need to have, you know, I think it'd be good to have some conversations about what committees the future city would like to have. I think that's some valuable information. That obviously is easy to change, but do you want to have an economic development commission? You know, we have bike walk and the tree committee, you know, all of those other ones that are existing. I think it'd be good to formally acknowledge which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to add that maybe are either currently shared with the town or some that maybe happen in other communities that you're interested in exploring. And then we just need to have a little bit of a conversation on some of the intergovernmental and health and human service organization, health and human service stuff. And then kind of return back after those two conversations with the select board of the organization, the org chart, the charter, and contracts. Otherwise, you wait until August 10th to have those conversations.
So you will need to set a tax rate. So it might behoove you to meet on the 27th anyway. You're going to have to do that.
Good point.
Yeah.
Tax rate is mildly important.
So just if you're weighing your options.
So from the sounds of it, it sounds as if we have to have another meeting in July regardless in order to set a tax rate.
Yeah.
Okay. So no matter how much I was prepared to say, maybe if we just utilize some more time,
longer.
regardless, okay. I was really gonna try and get out of that one, Brad. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, you could maybe do something on the 26th if you wanted it to all be on one night, but for you.
The 19th and the 26th, is that right?
So the 26th joint meeting, there's two others. So July 26th, September 27th, and October 25th. I believe I had emailed you all on this. If I did not, I do sincerely apologize. I had, in looking at our schedule, coming to the realization that we only had 3 joint meetings scheduled with the select board, and we have a lot we need to get through before we have a finalized charter and transition plan. I personally was just highly concerned we did not have enough time, so I wanted to get a few more on the calendar, so that way we had hopefully more, and we can cancel if necessary. So those would be added, and that's why July 26th wasn't on a previous schedule. July 27th. I don't know why we were only meeting once this month, but
I think it was because it was July, and that was something. Yeah, it was like
you heard no complaints.
That's right. That was the idea of summer. I don't know.
I think annually you only meet once in July, and the town only meets once in.
They ultimately met once this July.
Yep.
It happened to be that both of you were only going to meet once in July, but that was in January or something.
No worries. So Brad, your question of July 27th, August 31st, you're saying we don't need to worry about.
Yeah, and we'll take off September 11th.
Yep.
The public hearing on the 28th, we could consider if I like George's idea of making it more like a summit and not sound like a public hearing, because those sound boring. So that we potentially could
Other
move.
than there's a statute that you have to have.
Somewhere it's got to
still
say.
boring.
Other than
Legally,
the statute
you know.
part,
Yeah.
you'll be calling it a hearing, but you can have any feel you want.
Well, so I think we could move that hearing to either if you wanted to do a Saturday hearing, you could move it to either Saturday, the Saturday before or after.
Okay. I think it's an interesting idea. We can give it a shot, see how it goes. I don't care whether it's the one before or the one after. I don't. Yeah. As far as school schedules go, I don't think that time necessarily has any significant impact either.
No, the one after is actually out and about weekend. So if you wanted to do it this Saturday, it would be the 25th of September.
Okay.
Does that sound
I don't know. Whatever. I think that sounds good.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Amber or Dan, any concerns with that?
Nope.
I'm good with it.
Okay. It would be incredibly helpful, I think, if at the end of this meeting, within the next couple of days, if someone were to just email this decision out to the 5 of us,
Sure.
to make sure we get it on our calendar sooner rather than later.
big writing, simple words?
Yeah.
I'll get it to Linda and she'll update it.
Copy Tammy on that one. She's out.
To Tammy, is that what you think?
Both, yeah. Just put them both on there.
Yeah, Brad, sorry about the killjoy stuff about hearing and summit, but the law is pretty clear as to what the warning needs to be. After that, you can format it however you wish.
We can present it as a summit, and we can have the legal warnings that we need to. At the beginning, we can say we open. And,
I'm just saying that there's a legal prescription for its warning.
Right.
And then
Right.
Yeah, that's what you guys do. We're Parks and Rec. We like to have more fun. So you guys do that.
That's why the clerk is the way she is, and she's very good at what she does.
Susan's great. So was there anything else on the meeting schedule?
Have we agreed to adding the 27th?
I've heard agreement.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
So we're good with that one?
Yeah, we're good.
So the other one now was going to be the email from Mr. Furkey about the name of the entity.
Right.
Which I don't know if somebody who has the sharing capability.
I can quickly summarize it. I thought we get lots of interesting emails. I don't mean to pick one out, but I thought this was particularly interesting regarding separation. But I thought this was particularly interesting because Mr. Furkey recommended that he said he very much supports separation, but he recommends that instead of calling ourselves the City of Essex Junction, we should call ourselves the City of Essex, similar to St. Albans City and St. Albans Town, Rutland City, Rutland Town. My gut response is that it would be kind of confusing to do at this point, but I thought it was an interesting idea. I thought it was an intriguing idea.
They did too.
I thought they might agree. I thought I would at least, instead of just saying thank you very much for your email, I thought I would bring it up and open it for any possible discussion that we might have. I don't know if anyone, Amber, Dan, if you had any thoughts about it, you two folks, any thoughts about it or what?
I know that I did respond to his email, and for me, we are Essex Junction. Our charter is Essex Junction. We, in the website, we are the only Essex Junction in the community. We can't ignore the fact that the junction of the train tracks has been here longer than any of us have been alive.
Okay.
I think we hear it probably more frequently than the sirens. So to not add, the ode to the history of what has made the village with the trains, I think does a little bit of what I would say a disservice.
No.
And so I'd like to keep City of Essex Junction as compared to City of Essex, then have Town of Essex or whatever they end up choosing.
Mm-hmm.
I think City of Essex Junction has a nice ring.
Yep. I just thought it was, I think we should encourage this kind of discussion, and I just wanted to acknowledge it.
It can also help to clear up the question that Elaine had raised to us earlier as to what would the new city be called. Yep. But again, those were just my thoughts.
Yep.
Raj, Dan, Amber, George, if you guys have other thoughts.
I think you've summed up my thoughts anyway.
All right.
I just want to hear what people think. So,
yep,
more or less.
exactly.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And so I'm sorry, Dan, Amber, I almost started moving on without asking. Either of you have any thoughts on that?
I'm fine with it. I agree with what you said, Andrew. The identity of this area of Essex has been the junction for, well over 100 years, 150 years, or 100 and whatever odd years it's been. So, yeah, I'd continue with what we're doing. But listen, I'm open to listening to other people with comments. But I'm just saying, I think it's obviously, like you said, unique name, Essex Junction. There's only one Essex Junction. So something I'd like to keep.
Yeah. Jordan, do you know where that feedback is coming from? All right. Dan, I think that issue's been fixed. Do you want to just try talking again to make sure?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I agree with what was said, and particularly what you said, Andrew, about our identity being tied to the railroad junction here in the village and continuing that. But I'm still open to listening to other people's, opinions on it. Who knows? Maybe somebody's got something else that would float a little better than Essex Junction, but I find it hard to believe, but I'm still open to listening.
Amber?
All good.
Brad, maybe this is one of those place speak questions? Yep. Great. Instead of just either have an open text box or just how do you feel about City of Essex Junction? What other thoughts do you have? Yeah, great. So I believe that was going to put us on to the last item on our agenda for the work session, which is probably going to be the longest portion of our work session. And before we do that, though, as we do have these departments that are listed here, what I'm wondering is, similar to what we did with the police department, could we as trustees have that conversation for other departments and provisions of the transition, have this conversation in open session, or would you like to use executive session? My personal philosophy on this would still stay the same, as I think we could do this in an open session to help with building goodwill with the community as well as the select board. But if you all would prefer to have this in executive session, we can. And I would just say, let's do it at the end of our meeting. Either way, whether we do it in open or executive session, I'll say let's do it at the end because I know we have other guests waiting.
I would like to have it at the end of our meeting regardless, because I think we've got other guests waiting and other business to attend to. So I'd like to get on with that at this point. I don't care if we have it in exec. That's just my opinion. It's good either or whatever you want.
Oh, good plan.
Thank you, Raj.
Sure. I was gonna let them go.
Yeah. Amber or Dan?
I think we can decide later about the executive session versus public, but I agree, let's move on.
Okay.
The difference, I think, executive session would probably be a quicker discussion, but I'm fine with open session as well.
Okay.
And there's probably two parts, there's this piece of the conversation, which is really about departments and services, which you've already been talking about in open sessions. And I think it's just gaining some clarity before the joint meeting next week of, where we left things on June 21st is we want to share long-term police, short-term finance. We want to examine parks and rec services related to senior services and tree farm, and you're willing to listen to hear the select board out about assessing. So I think that piece would be important. I think in the public session, session, we can easily ascertain if that is still the druthers of the board.
I do think that so there was a request from the select board, or a proposal, I suppose, about having as much of a proposal to give the select board for our joint meeting on all of the items related to the transition plan. If we could come away from our meeting tonight with as much of that ironed out as possible, I think it will help to ensure that we've given the select board as much time as we possibly can to have these conversations.
Agreed. And the second piece, I think, beyond the services and departments, is there are other contracts that should be considered that haven't yet been discussed, and there might be value in having that conversation separate from this about what other contracts do you want besides departments and services.
Okay. We will tackle that later on.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.
Sounds good.
So now that will bring us on to item 5B, a presentation from Cathedral Square about the Vermont Development Program grant. Hello again, Sarah.
Hello. I am just going to come on really quickly. Tonight I have Kathleen and Cindy here from Cathedral Square, who are going to talk to you mostly about this initiative, but in brief, Cathedral Square and one other entity partnered about 15 years ago to build the Whitcomb Terrace housing project in the village of Essex Junction through a VCDP pass-through loan from the state to that entity. And at this point, Cathedral Square is looking to take over the property from the partnership. They are one of the entities in the partnership. Cindy and Kathleen are going to give you all the details. They've been extremely helpful for me in understanding this, and they're looking for authorization from the trustees to assume the debt of Whitcomb Terrace, and they're here tonight for that. They included a great memo in the packet and some additional information, and then I summarized just the recommendation when we get to that point. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Cindy and Kathleen, who I see on the screen as well. It's nice to see you both after talking to you on the phone.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that intro. And I wanted to just thank you first, start by thanking you for investing in this property's creation 16 years ago. So Cathedral Square, you're probably familiar with, is a nonprofit housing and services provider, primarily dedicated to older adults and people with disabilities. And so we really appreciate your help in getting this community off the ground. Whitcomb Terrace is 19 apartments, and it's mixed income, and it's for this community is for all ages, and there's a preference for people with mobility needs. It's highly accessible. We call it barrier-free, and there's a lot of really good accessibility features. Some of the units have rental assistance. There's a combination of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. It's a great location, and we also have SASH services, which is our, we architected that or designed that program, support and services at home, to help people age safely at home or just thrive at home. with preventive care and wellness programming. We have a part-time wellness nurse. The property's in great condition. We take care of all of our properties really well. We're really proud of that aspect of what we do. And this property was in a tax credit period, which is one of the financing sources. And Andrew knows very well about the tax credit program. And so after 15 years of compliance with the tax credit program, the partnership dissolves. And so typically the nonprofit sponsor exercises their right under the right of refusal to purchase the property and then continue its operation, subject to all the obligations around affordability. So we commit to permanent affordability in this property, and we ask for your authorization to allow Cathedral Square to assume the debt. So when we transfer ownership from the partnership to Cathedral Square, we don't take out any equity. It's just for the balance of all the debt and all the current obligations. And then we continue to run the property as affordable housing with services, keep it in good condition, keep meeting the intent of the program. And that's really all I was going to say, unless you have any questions. I know you have a big agenda. Just really wanted to thank you for your support of this housing community. It really serves a huge need. You know, we're really seeing dire situations right now with the lack of housing, and being able to maintain and continue affordable housing communities is really critical in this time. So thank you for your support, and open to any questions about who lives there, what we do, anything at all.
Cindy, thank you so much for that, and thank you in Cathedral Square for having the property where it is. As we know, our population is not getting younger, and so we know that this is an absolute need to have in our community, and allow people to live as close as possible to where they come from instead of having to go to another community, so that they can help to maintain their networks. I personally don't have any questions. I worked for that tax credit organization for a couple of years, and so I understand this work very well. So I don't have any questions.
Okay.
The rest of the board does. It's highly technical. We can really go over this for like 3 hours if you want.
Yeah.
I have read through all of the information that Sarah and others sent to us, and I don't have any questions. And other than saying, I think terrific job, and we're very glad to be able to be part of this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Amber or Dan, do you have any questions?
Nothing for me.
Yeah, you guys are too easy.
We try to be. I guess the other thing too with this is, you know, it took us a long time to get an affordable housing commission, or a housing commission in general, set up in our community. And as such, I think this is one of those ways where we can say, when someone asks, what have you done to help promote and or provide affordable housing in our community? We can offer this. That's what
Absolutely.
we can do.
Great. And similar with Whitcomb Woods, which is next door, we're hoping to, we plan to renovate that property in the, near future, I would say, because it's getting a little older. And we might be looking to VCDP, which is the acronym for Vermont Community Development Program, again. And if you see other opportunities in your town where we can be a resource, or there's a housing development opportunity, please feel free to reach out. So glad that you have a housing committee. That's a really important step. And you all you're doing a great job on that. So thank you for your commitment and for your support for this community.
Well, if you'd like a walking tour sometime of some possible areas in the village where we could use some more senior housing, happy to do that.
Awesome. We'll take you up on that. Thank you. And just to sort of tie this up, so we would make this transfer effective 10/1 because that's the start of our next fiscal year. And this is one approval of a few. So we really appreciate your support.
Thank you. So, Sarah, I'm not seeing a recommended motion.
I got one here.
So you do?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll make it. I'm hoping this is the right one. That the trustees authorize Cathedral Square Corporation to assume and continue to defer the Village of Essex Junction VCDP loan of $260,000 at 0% interest. Is that correct?
Great.
Is that correct, Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Raj. Trustees, any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great. Passed unanimously. Cindy, Kathleen, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Please say hi to Molly for me.
I will. Thanks. Take care all.
You too. And next up is something. An update on the opening for the Senior Center, Brownell and 2 Lincoln. As I see Allie's here and there. Hi, do you want to kick that off, or is there anything in the memo that you wanted to summarize for those who didn't read it?
I hope you all read it. Nicole
I didn't read it.
Nicole did a great job putting the memo together. I was on vacation last week, but she is the guru when it comes to this. She and I have been meeting frequently this spring, and obviously throughout everything crazy this past year. But in regards to the center specifically, our priority was to make a proactive plan and reopening schedule and plan for the center space at 2 Lincoln, and not just jump into things and feel reactive and unsure if everyone who we typically see and maybe new people that we would see would feel reluctant to join us. So Nicole has started some summer programming. We're using Memorial Hall for better floor space, and we're going to some of the parks and just getting the interest and getting reconnected with those who may not use the van service, but would use the programming side of the services, and have a plan for September. It also aligns with our fall programming schedule, and really before co-location and then through transitions of co-location, there were probably 3 staff members working on senior programming for those 50 plus. And it's really come down to Nicole. So she's program director for senior services. That's the transportation services, but also the programming availability within the community at the center and otherwise, because there is a chunk of the community that we haven't met and built relationships with, that we're hoping to do so in the fall. So if you have questions about the memo or anything, happy to answer those for you.
I think one of the helpful things to see within the memo, and I just want to make sure to get this right, is that under the protocols from the Vermont Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living, that social distancing requirement for the 65 plus population within senior centers and community spaces requires 100 square feet of space per senior. I think that having those kinds of details are incredibly helpful for us, so that way when we are asked how come people can't come back into the senior center, it's, well, for one, you need 100 square feet per person, so that can make having an open to the entire senior population community kind of difficult to do.
Right. Yeah. With the way that the space is kind of separated out at 2 Lincoln for senior activities, it does make it difficult, and that space doesn't include the kitchen area, and there wasn't sort of community-based tea and coffee and kitchen use as well. And it also included a staff member. So even though Nicole has a separate office, with her traveling through the 3 different spaces, that really affected opening it up and being really restrictive.
Trustees, any comments, questions?
I don't have questions, no.
Okay.
I mean,
Amber or Dan, any comments or questions related to this for Ally?
Nothing for me.
No.
Okay. I do know that there were some members from the public who were on earlier who wanted to speak to the senior center in particular. If the board is okay, if we can just go through these one at a time, we can get to like Brownell and then 2 Lincoln after that. I would say for those of you who have been patient, I think you were all on the phone, who wished to speak to the board about the senior center. and reopening, I would say now is a time to do so. Please do address your questions to me, and if I can't answer them, I will definitely rely on the professionals here. So for those of you on the phone, go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and be happy to hear your question.
I believe there was Polly, Paula, and Bernie that I heard who were here. I'm not sure if they still are.
They are on the phone, or I see that there are the phone numbers, and they look familiar. Did we mute them? And I'm wondering.
Some of them muted themselves actually, so, but we can unmute them.
So how about this? I'll say the last 4 digits of your phone number, and when I do that, if they could be unmuted, that would be greatly appreciated. So if we could start off with 6751.
Does not let me unmute them, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
Or from the phone. Could be *6 if you don't have a mute function, like if it's not a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's *6 from like a regular dial-in phone to unmute or mute yourself.
Okay, so if your phone number is 6751, if you want to unmute yourself by pressing *6, give that a shot. I'll give that a few seconds, then move on to the next.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, here we go.
There you go.
I heard first.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
Can you hear
Hello?
me?
Hold on a second. I heard first from 2166. So who?
That's Bernie. Hi, that's me.
2166. Why, if you
That's me.
yourself, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Bernadine Haslam.
There we go.
I bought my first home in Essex in 1971. I've been paying taxes 50 years as of today, as of this year, and I have heard that the seniors are going to be limited to 9 to 2, 3 days a week at the senior center. Is that correct?
I don't know. If you don't mind, would you be willing to ask any other questions you have, and so then we can just answer?
Sure.
At some point?
Okay. Mainly, I don't have many questions. I just have some comments. And as you mentioned earlier in your meeting, the population is not getting any younger. And many seniors that I know enjoy coming to the senior center, not just from 9 to 2. That's really early for seniors. I know the bus is running that time right now, but later on, hopefully they won't. And many seniors enjoy meeting other seniors afternoons, play cribbage, bridge, and other games there at the senior center. And I hate to have that taken away from them. I don't think it's fair. I think that the youngsters, the teens that you're trying to accommodate, could meet in other places, maybe ADL Gym, Prospect Street, Maple Street facility, or even at the high school. Maybe there would be space for them if you don't want them upstairs in the senior center. But I don't think that you should take the space away from the seniors. And I deeply regret that, and hope that you don't decide to do that, because it's very important when you become a senior. There aren't many places to go to just enjoy yourself and join your friends and do things like that. And I think it's very important to our senior population. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Ali, I cannot speak to the open 2 to 3 days a week or being open from 9 to 2.
Sure. So right now, yes, Bernie, you're correct. Our transportation days, due to the 2 drivers we have, are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we want to make sure that there's transportation available during the same hours with center activities.
That.
Yeah.
I understand that.
I'm just trying to make it understandable for everyone who's on the call too. So and it's not a permanent change. It's just what we currently have and what we're currently planning on. We are hiring for additional drivers, and when that opens up more is when more will open up. But it's more about being able to open more up as we go instead of shut more down as we start. And so we're looking to open with what we currently have for, capacity in our staffing.
I understand that for now, but am I wrong in assuming that we were going to have some of the space taken away from us there at the senior center?
So again, right now, because last year with everything COVID, we were really limited in what school space we could use for after school.
But what's the plan for the future? I'd heard that in the future that's also going to be limited, and we were going to have to come up to Memorial Hall. Is that something that's not true? And it will be, the decisions will be made later, or?
If I had a crystal ball, I could tell you, Bernie. Right now, we're utilizing Memorial Hall as an alternate location, as a satellite location. I know.
So the rumors about our senior center being taken from us there, where you are tonight, are not true.
So Bernie, I'm having a really hard.
That's the trustees.
Who is not involved in these details being able to hear Ali's answer. So I'd appreciate it if you just don't mind letting her answer the questions, and then we can go from there.
Fine.
Ali, please go ahead.
So right now, with the schedule that is proposed for reopening, we are utilizing municipal space that is available for programming in case we cannot get into the school space, which we have relied on for many, many years. And so that was a big help for us this past year with after school enrichment programs. And that's our plan right now, not quite knowing what the school plan is. And so similar to Memorial Hall, we use it the same way for the schools at Essex Elementary and Founders Memorial as a satellite location that doesn't add extra expenses or extra fees to participation costs. So I don't know the rumor you're hearing. I just know that we are trying to utilize municipal space as best as we can. And again, things may open up more than close down. And that's our hope.
Thank you for that, Ali. George, I know you wanted to mention
Yeah,
something.
maybe I could clear up. I think what we're talking about here is a difference between how do you ramp back up senior services, but long term, the senior center is here at Lincoln Hall. There is absolutely no plan to ultimately long-term shut down the senior center here at Lincoln Hall. The plan, I think, Ali, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the plan ultimately, eventually, is to get everything back as it was before the pandemic. How we get there might be a little rocky and maybe isn't going to be as quick as we would all like it to be, but ultimately there's absolutely no plan to cut back on space here at Lincoln Hall or eliminate the senior center as it's always been traditionally.
That's great.
That help clear it up?
Yes.
That's great. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I understand having to improvise right now with COVID and all that, and certainly do. Very good. Thank you for your information.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you, Bernie. The next number I saw come up was 1125.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello?
Hi. If you just don't mind stating your name so we know who this is, and go ahead and let us know your question. Whoever that is on 1125, it looks like you've just muted. Oh, now you've unmuted yourself. Try now.
Yes. Hello. My name is Carol Hamill, and I'm a resident of Essex Junction since 1962, been paying taxes. I am going to read from the memo that it says that, well, I would like to say that right with these changes in September, the seniors get 15 hours at the senior center, where before we were there from 10 to 4 and we had 30 hours. But I want to read from the memo. It says that it will be closing earlier to allow opportunities for the space to meet community needs such as after-school programming. And it says the new hours of the center reflect staffing availability and community needs for safe facility spaces for the youth of our community. So, I mean, I don't think that's fair that you're taking away from the seniors to allow the school kids to use that when we do have plenty of school, buildings.
Thank you for that, Carol.
I mean, I'm just reading from the memo that was sent out, and that's what it says.
Yep.
So it doesn't say that there's any plans to bring back the full-time hours.
I hear what you're saying. I see that here. I don't have much else to add to that. Allie, I don't know if you do.
I believe we just addressed it in how we're looking to, and Carol, I'm not sure if you heard my answers to Bernie's questions. It was really similar to yours. And right now, this is what we're planning on and hoping that more opens up based on availability of other spaces so that we can continue to reopen more and more of the senior center to the population that it's designated for right now.
But to me, it sounds like if the kids get in there, they don't have, a place for you to put them, then we won't be able to go back.
I think,
again, we're just, oh, sorry, Andrew, this is all you.
I was just going to say, I think this is a part of that rocky process that George was talking about. We have to try some things, see what works, and adjust as time, as staffing allows. As one of the other things that I hear is that staffing challenges with relation to transportation is also contributing significantly to this. And as we've seen, at least with the school district, in finding bus drivers through that venue being quite the Herculean effort, I assume it is also as equally troubling or difficult, if you will, for your van drivers as well, Allie. So I think this is also a portion of, we've all been, well, I'm not going to say we all, as from my understanding, the socialization at the senior center is absolutely paramount to your to well-being. I think just a continued patience as this is ironed out is just going to be requested.
Could I just say one more thing? As far as my bridge group goes, there's nobody that takes the bus, and I've been to the senior center a lot, and there's very few people that take the bus to the senior center.
Okay. To know.
Thank you for that. I'm sure that is great feedback for Allie and
Yes.
And staff.
Yes.
So I think another number that I saw next was ending in 3040.
That's me. My name is Madeline Orsini, and I'm a homeowner in Essex Junction. I'm also a senior, and I'm calling for the same reasons. I had heard that our hours to use the senior center were going to be limited for the same thing I heard was so that they could offer youth activities. And that was my concern, that we were losing our senior center space and for the hours that we were accustomed to. But now that I've heard Allie's comments and everything, I understand the answers. But I just wanted to have it noted that that was my reason for calling too, was that I was upset at the cut in hours and the availability of the senior center.
Mm-hmm.
So Allie has already answered. I've already heard her response.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Mandy.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The last four of 6751. If there was something you wanted to speak to the board about with relation to the senior center and your phone number ends in 6751, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay. We'll move on then to the last four ending in 0280. If there's something you wish to address to the board about the senior center, now would be the time to unmute yourself and do so. So again, that's the phone number with the last four digits of 0280.
Yes.
Great. Go ahead and let us know who you are.
This is Elaine Gincola, and I live in Essex town. And we moved here in 1990,
and the senior center has I've been attending the senior center. I've worked there under Luann for different programs, and what I don't understand is that why is it not good enough, the square feet regarding the seniors? Now, why do you allow a younger generation in that probably 3/4 of them have not been vaccinated, whereas probably pretty close to 90 to 100% of the seniors have been has been vaccinated? And so why is it such a concern to move the seniors down to the hall, and yet you're letting the young children come in, and yet they'll probably crowd the senior center way more than what the seniors would do at that time of day, and then not extending the hours the way they were in the beginning, even though you're only doing it like Tuesday through Thursday. You're doing it Monday through Friday for the kids, and I don't understand the reason between having the children there who are probably not all vaccinated compared to the seniors that probably are all vaccinated.
Allie, I think I can try and take this one. Thank you for your question, and I'm sorry, I didn't get your first name. What was it?
Pauline.
Pauline, thank you for that. So I think one of the biggest reasons has to do with one of the regulatory differences in our state, as well as what I'll go ahead and just call a frank inequity in our system, in that right now, children under 12 cannot be vaccinated. It is just not legally permissible under the federal authorization through the emergency process for youth of that age to be vaccinated. Yet at the same time, the Agency of Education, as I understand it, did away with all of their social distancing guidelines with regards to how much feet need to be allocated per student within that age group. Whereas those who are age 65 and older for senior centers, the state's Department for Aging and Independent Living has said that senior centers must have 100 square feet per senior over the age of 65, even though the overwhelming majority of you in this state are vaccinated. It's not fair, frankly. I wish I had a better answer, but from as I understand it, those two regulatory organizations appear to have quite different philosophies on that process. And Allie.
Okay, I have another question. If you are sending the seniors down to the hall, how do you expect some of the seniors who walk to the senior center, they don't have transportation, but they walk to spend time at the center, how are they going to get down to the hall? And you're concerned, and I'm sure they're concerned about the numbers of people who are going down to the hall. Well, probably there would be a lot more if they were open longer in the village where these people could come, because they live right there in the village. So some of them walk there to play games in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think.
So how do you answer that one?
I don't have as good of an answer for this one. I'm not gonna pretend that one. What I would think that this is a part of that rocky start that was mentioned before, and a little bit of that learning process of we kind of learn as we go with this. Allie, and I don't mean to put those words in your mouth, but I think we as a community are all trying to figure this out as we go, given the staffing resources that we have.
Well, I think it better be rethought about on also the hours for the center. I mean, some of the seniors don't get there until 1 o'clock, and they'd like to stay at least until 4, like they have in the past. And they enjoy being there, and a lot of work has been put into that senior center by a lot of seniors. And it's really sad that they can't go back to it and enjoy their center. It's really sad. I'm sorry, but we have a lot of seniors in both Essex Junction and Essex Center, and they enjoy that center a lot. They used to have a lot of programs, and they had, I don't know if any of you on the staff have been to the senior Christmas bazaars that the seniors had worked so hard in the past to have. This is all.
Thank you, babe. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sorry.
Well, I think
cannot miss
to consider how senior center.
Please, it would help to facilitate this conversation a lot easier.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I was just asking whoever was interrupting to please not do that, as it's very disruptive to the flow of the conversation and is not going to help with getting through this.
All right, I'm about done, but I just want to let you know that a lot of seniors had put a lot of energy and time into that senior center, and they've enjoyed it and they've worked hard for it. And if you looked in the past of what kind of Christmas bazaars that our seniors had put on, Halloween parties that the staff and the seniors have enjoyed, I think that's something that the board had really better consider. And look in the history of the senior center and talk to some of the seniors that have been there over the years and all the time they've put into it.
Thank you, Pauline. I do appreciate that. I know
okay, that's
been heard.
Okay. Thank you for letting me sound off.
Thank you. So anybody else on Microsoft Teams, if you could please go ahead and raise your hand to let us know if you could. Let me try that one again. Those of you on Microsoft Teams.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the United States was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the Empire of Japan.
Time for break.
That's a real senior.
Wait, I muted us all, so we are muted right now too. That was the fastest way too. Jordan, do you want to unmute us?
No.
I will get to the room after Teams. I promise.
We are unmuted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Fastest way.
We'll try that one again.
Just watch the movie.
So those of you on Microsoft Teams, please do raise your hand if you wish to speak to the board about the senior center. And I'll make sure to give you the time. All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. All right, we'll bring it back to the physical room. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board about this item, if you don't mind, just raise your hand so I can get an idea as to how many. Okay, please, if you want to stand up, if you want to come up here, if you want to stay seated, whatever feels comfortable for you, and just let us know who you are.
Well, actually, you need to come a lot closer to this microphone, or nobody will hear you outside.
Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I did call in, so I came down. My name is Paula Sargent, and my husband Rusty and I have lived in Essex for 20 years. And I just want to reiterate what these seniors have said about the passion and the importance of the senior center. I think we should be building the senior center as quickly as possible because people in Essex are desperate to be able to see themselves. And there's no other place in Essex really where they can do it. The Agewell has gone to Colchester, and so those services are not as available for them as they were before. Thank goodness some of the churches have been open, and it's been a big struggle. And now is the time the seniors need our support. I will tell you, I meet people at the supermarket. I meet people on the street. I know people that used to go to the senior center. Most people walk and most people drive, ages 50 to 100. That age group is desperate in this community. And the thought of cutting them back to 15 hours a week is so shocking to all of us.
China has evolved a fighting nation. Japan is in no position to dictate to Britain.
We have 5 sons, so I know about youth. And I've been a teacher for years. I run a nationally accredited daycare program. I'm an advocate for kids. but seeing the importance and the success of the senior center in Essex, it's the heart of our community. And cutting them back to 15 hours a week is unbelievably cruel. And I think we should. Some people come on the van, thank goodness for the van, but most people come in, eat lunch, and are there when they're up. They're in the afternoon. There's education for them there. There's health services. There's a food pantry for there, and there's really no other place in the community that they can meet like that. So please think carefully as we go back into reorganizing these programs on the priorities. I really feel like this is important to have the space for them and to return to the services that they had before. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I can say with some certainty that I feel confident our staff who oversee the programming related to the senior center and the hours related to the senior center and the services do wholly understand the research behind the evidence research behind social isolation, especially due to COVID and the fact that so many have had to not interact with anybody, and how many within this population have just been homebound for the last 16, 17, 18 months, and how detrimental that can be for someone's well-being. I'm fairly confident that it has been well heard, and I do hope that, yes, we are able to have the center open as much as is possible to allow for the health of everybody involved, the seniors, the staff, and that it is able to be staffed to what it should be. So, thank you.
You've got a hand up there.
Thank you. Just getting to that. Deb McAdoo, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is really, what a great community we have. We all care about each other. There's so much passion and compassion. Jeez, I'm crawling. I just had this thought, and I just want to throw it out there for what it's worth. Is there any way we could use the fairgrounds?
The nation goes military Japan, still trying to unseat the Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek, and still failing. Japan has both hands full.
Manners. Can we just?
It's such old news.
Just
kick them out.
Yeah. Can you do that?
I already did one time. Yes, I will continue to
Thank
do
you.
so.
Thank you. Is there a way to permanently block somebody?
Well, they
who's-
might be using a different sign in, or it's
Yeah.
like a robot, obviously. But continue on.
Okay. Sorry, Deb.
No, that's okay. I just really appreciate the compassion that we all have for each other. And Andrew, thank you so much for speaking to the impact of social isolation on older people. And I wondered if there was, now that we're not giving shots out at the fairgrounds, maybe there's room there and we could do something there as a temporary, just throwing it out. Sorry, George, didn't mean to scratch your head.
No.
Thank you for that, Deb.
Thinking.
All right. I think we have concluded the public input portion of this item. Thank you, Ali. And please let us know how things progress.
Can we discuss this a little bit?
Yeah. Board?
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm hearing is it's not having space. It's having a very specific space. It's having this space. That's what these people want to get back to. Just finding an empty, vacant area somewhere in the village or the town is not enough. The reason I was scratching my head, I'm trying to understand why 100 square feet per senior for vaccinated seniors makes sense. That sounds like a holdover from something in the middle of the pandemic that just hasn't been addressed or something. I don't want to make conjecture right now, but I would like to suggest, considering this, that we stay right on top of this as much as possible. That just doesn't, 100 square feet per person, I mean, what? Yeah, so you would need a stadium to accommodate like a 60 or 50 or 60 people. I would say let's stay on top of that particular ruling and be able to transition as quickly as possible back to normal, and not get too caught up into elaborating the plans and relocating space. I would really like that. It would be bad if, for example, if that particular regulation change, but we don't find out for 2 weeks. I would like to sort of like get daily updates or whatever on when that changes so we can quickly transition back.
Interesting, because that's not the case for where my mom lives.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I don't know,
understand.
but I'm sure, I don't doubt your veracity,
Yes,
but
I
I'm
know,
just,
it's weird.
it's just a weird thing, and it's a little concerning, and I'm a little concerned that we're gonna go too far finding all this additional space, and what maybe we really need to be concentrating on is figuring out why this is necessary and how quickly we can get back, get away from it.
Old timer, don't you remember this song? Only I do. Well, I don't hear anything.
Thanks, Marguerite.
Mm-hmm.
Allie, as soon as you can, unmute yourself. Please go ahead.
So Nicole and I started planning this as we were planning the summer programming ahead of the center programming to get the interest and activity levels and interactions from the isolated population in our community ahead of time. So yes, the 100 square feet per person, which was only 4 people in the large room at the center, was back in May before restrictions were lifted in mid-June. Restrictions have been lifted. She's been really busy with the vans and the programming. So this is our plan as of 2 months ago, without, with whipping up a memo to let you know that yes, we're reopening and things will change. And this was the plan. And again, there's
Go
that
ahead.
person again. Quick, mute him. Thank you.
You're a ninja.
So anyway, we had this plan, we did the summer programming start, and we were revisiting this as Nicole, as a program director, was going to be in the programs team meetings for the fall brochure. So everything was in one printed resource from both rec. So the restrictions have been lifted. Again, as stated multiple times, this is not a permanent change. This is a lean-in process. And this is not set in stone. This is just how we were going to plan for it if nothing had changed for this specific population.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing you say that that plan may be changing. Did I hear?
Yeah. I mean, Nicole's on vacation this week. I was on vacation last week. We haven't connected in regards to the fall programming yet, and that first program meeting happened last week. I wasn't here for that, and there's a lot to be discussed with how the brochure is going to go out and who's going to be promoting what. And this is our plan as of 2 months ago, and we just honestly, with the timing of the questions coming up, we haven't connected because of our schedules. Nothing is permanent. She's been wanting to open the center for so long, and my advice to her was to do it in a proactive approach instead of continue to be reactive and look as though she is unplanned and isn't sure of what is correct and what is protocol and all of that, but to start and open the doors in a fresh, inviting way.
Thank you, Allie. And if there's anything that we can do to try and help with facilitating the reopening or expanding the hours, please let us know. All right. Thank you, Allie. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. Wendy Hisco, I see that you're here.
Hi, I'm here. Hello.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on the memo that you sent for the public who may not have had a chance to read the memo?
Yes, we are working on just finding a balance right now. I think as Ali just pointed out, it's been really hard to follow regulations, and we have definitely we've been open for curbside, which has been really staff intensive, and we're open now for browsing hours 4 days a week. and we're continuing appointments. We've gotten some people very appreciative about continuing appointments, and the curbside, or it's not really curbside, it's self-service pickup, is still very popular, and we're just figuring out the balance. We're also down 3 staff right now. So that is definitely impacting our operations, as we're hiring, and that is, I think we're getting closer to hiring, but we're going to be doing a lot of training as well, because we're not getting people that are aware of all of our own policies and procedures change. It feels like daily at this point, just because everything's continuing to change. And there is a lot of, I think, appreciation. There's some people that are frustrated. I think people are done with the pandemic, but we are still in a pandemic, and trying to serve the community is something we're really trying to find a balance for.
Thank you, Wendy. I think that in just some of the emails or social media conversations that I've seen, I think one of the general questions is trying to understand why the difference in hours between, say, Brownell and Essex Free are what they are, and as well as just the broader community into why it seems that Brownell is not as open as other libraries.
We are working on being open. Our appointments had been filling up, which was not necessarily the case at other libraries. And we're just trying to find a balance of staffing what we have. We've had we're a destination for communities, all surrounding communities. So we have a lot more of an impact than other libraries that do have, they're more open, and we are working on it. But our staff, we were providing a lot more service throughout the year, and we're trying to transition from that, where some libraries have not been, a lot of nearby libraries haven't really been providing as much service. So we've been kind of going full force, or the self-service pickup requires a lot more staff time. And it's a balance. Our staff is not, right now everybody's flat out, and that is not something that you can see from outside the walls of the library, but that's why we're working on it. Staff is very excited about seeing people, but it's also trying to find what we can do, because we can't necessarily have hours. We're trying to figure out where the balance is, because a lot of people have been very combative, and trying to manage that is something we're concerned with. So it's just really trying to find the balance for our community. We are the only library outside of Fletcher Free that has a public bus stop, which brings different people in. And we are definitely much more of a destination than other libraries.
When you're saying people are being combative, are you saying from a safety perspective that your staff are like physically being attacked, or verbally
attacked? And that's why we're trying to do this slowly, to find out really what the balance is going to be of how we can manage the public when they do come in, because we want to keep the staff safe, and also find the balance. If we can't have people at the desks because they're getting books or other resources, that's not a safe situation either.
Before turning it over, trustees, questions, comments?
I'm good. I mean, hang in there, Alex. Wendy.
Yeah, I mean, this is Raj. I can't imagine the difficulty in the transition that you're trying to navigate. I'm wondering if now most people are getting back to normal. People are back to work. We're all in here. There's probably 28 to 30 people in this room right now. 20, I don't know. If maybe the book pickup, the call ahead book pickup gets transitioned out to help with.
Well, it's a service we've always provided. We've always provided the service. There's just a lot more demand now. So it's just trying to figure out where the balance is in the community of what people want. I know that not everybody's excited about being in buildings, and I would say that there are families out there that are less excited as you see more busyness out there, with people not not masking their children, never mind. We don't know about who's unvaccinated. So it's a weird mix out there right now, and we're just trying to manage. And we are talked about trying to pull the book lists less, but then they continue to fill up. So we have to pull it multiple times a day. So it's really keeping an eye on what is actually happening as far as the demand. And we've already, to this week, we opted to drop another day of appointments to have open browsing to see how that works. But the appointments today, I know that the first section of them were filled, even though we're open 4 days a week. So there's, it's everybody's in their own different comfort zone, I think.
So is it a difference in population that's really a difference between like Fletcher, Free, Rutland? I'm trying to think of the bigger, more diverse population libraries that are pretty much open. Is it the population? Is it the proximity to the pub? What's the? I mean, I guess I'm wondering how the other libraries are dealing with what I can only imagine as people responding to "please put your mask back on" comments for the combative, or please, your 30-minute computer session is over, or you've been in the library for 30 minutes, we'd like you to leave. Because it looks like other libraries are doing similar, you're doing they're doing appointments. I'm just wondering what you're hearing from your colleagues in other municipalities and how they're, similar municipalities. I consider Burlington, maybe Rutland City, their library, how are they managing to do that? What's the difference? And I'm asking because
Fletcher Free is,
I'm getting from people.
Right. Fletcher Free has been open more throughout the year because they couldn't keep up with the demand of people placing holds, and they also have a lot more staff to deploy. They were and they have a lot different. They have modern HVAC systems, so it's a different scenario of trying to control people in the Burlington facility versus our own, where we have one air exchanger for the whole building, and I think Fletcher Free has like 5 times as many staff, so they're just a different beast. And they also have a security team at the door, so there's a lot of differences. So we're trying to do what we can with the resources that we have, and we're increasing. So we've not at any point we are reevaluating on like at least a weekly basis, often more of what we can do, and where we think we can make changes to continue increasing the services to the community in the building, instead of just out coming in the doors to get their resources. But we do have every building is very different as far as what they can handle as far as the HVAC and air exchanging.
Is security something you think you need for a while? I mean,
I think Evan has mentioned that. I don't know, like it would have to be all the hours. That's the thing, is like the people who are difficult don't go on a schedule. There's not something that would be an easy solution. Or I do believe like Fletcher Free has their hours aligned with the local service agencies, and their security team hours aligned with the local service agencies. So it's a different world with different resources. I don't know. Right now, we're just trying to slowly open and see how it goes. It seems like it would be jumping a lot to jump right into security, which would also be another whole thing to sort out of how you do that.
Yeah,
go ahead, Evan.
So, in talking with Wendy and her staff and our staff, if you want to go back a few months, we took an ultra cautious approach to the pandemic. A lot of our buildings were open by appointment. We realized that a lot of people were going to get vaccinated, but not the youth. And when you are dealing with a library, you're getting not only the youth, but you're getting of all ages, including the seniors. And a lot of our employees have that gamut of range too. So some of them were vaccinated, some of them were not vaccinated. We have teens who work for us. They were not vaccinated yet. And then we're now short a couple of staff members. So in talking with Wendy, we wanted to be able to provide very good, if not excellent service all the time that we were open versus opening and kind of being okay on some days, not good on other days, and then you can't get your reputation back. So that's why we're also looking at a little bit of a slower, take a measured approach of this. And, you know, I hate being a doom and gloom guy, but I see the news. Not everybody's vaccinated. We do have the Delta variant. It is starting to show up in and around this area. And so the library, the Brownell Library, does get a wide range of patrons. And so with that, it's been a slow opening. It's been cautious. It's something that I have stood behind. And I've told Wendy and others, I would much rather you be very careful with your hours and give excellent service for the hours that you're open than uneven service and be jumbled.
I think that's a good strategy. Yep.
So
and Wendy, also thank you to you and your staff for all that you are juggling and going through, and it's much appreciated.
So as we did with the senior center, we can go ahead and take some questions from the public. For the sake of randomness, let's go to those in person now, and we'll go back to the virtual world as long as we don't keep getting bombed and whatever that's called. Anybody here physically who had any questions, comments on this? Okay, that was quick. Anybody on Microsoft Teams, if you have any questions, comments, please go ahead, raise your hand, let me know. I will make sure to call on you. Jess, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, my name is Jess Wozlowski. I am a single parent of a kid living in the village, and I find it unconscionable that the library is still shut. I'm just going to rattle off the stuff that I know. Shelburne Library is open for 42 hours now. Richmond Library, 42 hours a week. Winooski, 40 hours a week. Williston, 45 hours a week. Jericho, 40 hours a week. Fletcher Free Library, 56 hours a week. You point and shoot at any library across the state of Vermont, and you'll find a library that is struggling really hard to open their doors, because it's a central tenet of librarianship to put access as your number one priority. Like secondary tenet of librarianship is democracy, diversity, education. And I'm disturbed by the conversation because it sounds like some people's personal preferences seem to be overriding the discussion and not what the needs of the community are, what it means when the director of a library has a problem with people who walk in off the street from their own community, what it means that there's a problem, there's a public bus station right there. I don't have a very easy time believing that our library has a more challenging population that walks in off the street than the Fletcher Free Library does, which like has open doors, advertises their AC, and lets people stay as long as they want. Now, there's lots and lots of businesses that have opened their doors and like had limits, have a person right at the front door, keeping track to make sure no more than 12 people are in there at a time. But to have the doors shut as much as they are, and like I even signed up for some of these Zoom virtual kits, which like is the last thing I think my kid needs right now, is to be on the computer more in the summer. But like even just getting into that vestibule and knowing when the right hours are, it's like you actually have to have no job to keep track of when the open time at the Brownell Library is. And it is the like largest singular earmarked item that our municipal taxes pay for. And I have a real hard time losing $20 a month in my taxes for a library I can barely access in the past year. I appreciate that like there are people clearly putting tons of effort into these like bagged kits, but I would trade in all the bagged kits in the world to like be able to walk in the doors and not have to tattoo a like really random schedule to my arm to know when it's open. It's the middle of the summer. I worked in a school all year. I was a librarian in a school all year. Like, it was scary, and I had colleagues that got sick, but it's not that anymore. So many people have vaccines, and it's no longer, like, in my mind, a teacher being in a school all year, an acceptable excuse that, like, we're following people's personal preferences around fear as to whether or not we open one of our, again, like, highest cost single items for the village taxpayers. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. The staffing seems to be the most realistic thing I've heard, but then I also heard it's actually about security, but it's actually about airflow, but it seems like it's about fear of having to tell people to wear masks or fear of confrontation. And I'm like, how much of this is about our own fragility and fear of our own community members? Like, I'm just like, I'm concerned that what happens when this then eventually does open is we do lose library hours, we do lose nighttime hours, and we close at 5 because of the potential incoming public. You know, like, I'm sorry, there's just too many excuses here for me to think it's like all just about COVID at this point. Thank you for listening. Okay.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on Teams have any other questions, comments? Okay. Seeing none. Wendy, I do want to thank you, and I do want to thank your staff, as you all absolutely are the utmost professionals in this field, and I do appreciate what you're doing for our community. Your guidance or your prioritization of good customer service, I do appreciate, and as a parent of an 11-year-old who cannot get vaccinated at this point in time, to appreciate that you do consider those as well and their needs. I hope you get the staffing that you need.
Thank you. We do too.
Trustees, anything else before we move on to 2 Lincoln?
No, just thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the comments.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks.
Marguerite, Evan, who wants to go?
Oh, we were just discussing
We were just
that.
discussing this very topic. I can go if you want.
There's a memo in the packet, but for the people, basically, as many of you know, that we talked about the senior center. That's one side of the building. Chips is upstairs. There are tenants, and the community development department is in this building, as well as a couple of administration staff members. Currently, we are doing the community development by appointment, and staff is now returning to the building. We have office hours for people that are in this building, like Marguerite, who's the assistant manager, Linda Mons, and Tammy Getchell. We are reviewing putting in more of an intercom system at the back door. One of our issues is that community development, Terry's usually the only, potentially the only one here in the building, and she does go out in the field for inspections. So, and Robin is down in the basement, not really knowing if somebody's upstairs unless they say something like hello or ring a bell. So we're looking at an intercom system for the door. We are also looking at getting our schedules so that we could have more people in the buildings, so that the doors can be open in that case. So, Marguerite, do you have anything to add to that?
No. I would just say that's sort of the office part. That does not, Trips and Senior, they all have their own entryway, and then this space is being used for public meetings, like this one, and then for the Planning Commission, any of the other public spaces as well. That has come up because right now we're leaving this setup up while we get used to it, and I think that's going to be the way it is for the foreseeable future. So that does limit a little bit of, who or what we're going to just, I guess, allow in here for now as we kind of figure out how to keep these, and our committees learn how to use it for their meetings, and that all of that has to happen too. So, yeah. go
And
ahead.
then we also put up some new signage at the drop box. Anybody who's got a water bill, or in the future when tax bills hopefully will be more open at that time, but you can put your tax bills or water bills in the drop box. We do transfers every day from 2 Lincoln to 81 and 81 to 2 Lincoln. It is not that terrible. It's a total of 3 blocks. But when it was raining the other day, it was a very wet 3 blocks. And so we're moving in that direction, and keeping our services up in the building as best we can.
Trustees, any comments, questions?
No, not at this point. My only comment is I appreciate the complexity, and I just urge us to try to get back to normal as fast as possible. Yes, with the library, 2 Lincoln, and the senior center. That's all.
Members of the public? Anybody on Teams with questions related to the services at 2 Lincoln? Please go ahead and raise your hand. Jess, I see your hand is up. Is that still the holdover from before, or is that a new one?
That's an oop.
Thank you. All right. Seeing nothing. Thank you all. Thank you for the updates. So I see on our agenda that the next item is the electrical upgrade. Do we have anybody from staff or public who's here for this? And if not, could we just do that later? Because I know we have other people here.
We'll do it later.
Okay.
Rick Hamlin.
Tom is here.
Might actually be Rick Hamlin.
Oh, Tom is here for it?
Tom is here.
Yes.
Okay. I was assuming Rick may have been here for...
No, Rick is here for...
Oh, for the engineering.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go to the bid for 2 Lincoln and the Village Fire Department. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Could you give us the elevator pitch version of this?
Sure.
Notes.
Sure. So basically, this all started out a year and a half ago when Chips asked to put in an oven up in their space to do some educational training. And then they also asked about some sort of an ADA minimal compliant access to their space from ground level. And so I started looking at the electrical panels, and there is no electrical space. So then talking to an electrical engineer, got looking at what we could do to make more space. His recommendation was to add more panels. Well, in order to add more panels, the transformer needs to be upgraded, and at the same time, we found that the village fire department didn't have its own electrical meter. So 2 Lincoln and the village fire department swap month to month the electrical charges. So things compounded. So it was easy enough to have an electrical designer design us a true electrical redistribution with a bigger transformer, separate out the village fire department with its own meter, electrical meter, and provide more amperage for 2 Lincoln Street for down the road, and to bring the electrical service at 2 Lincoln up to today's code.
Great. Appreciate that. And so it sounds like cutting into a 100-plus-year-old building revealed that there's some more issues than was originally thought.
Correct. Correct.
Yep. So what's proposed, it's within budget, right?
Yes.
Great. I think it's wonderful. Having Chips being able to do, having a stove up there would be great for their opportunities and for our youth. I have no questions, concerns. Trustees?
Nope.
Sounds great.
Dan Amber? I see you shaking your head no. Somebody want to make that?
I will make a motion that the trustees direct the manager to move forward with the electrical redistribution project this summer and use Pratt & Smith Electric with a total bid of $57,557.
And if you don't mind, leave us room for any extras that need.
And leave room for extras, but not to exceed 10,000.
2,000, I think, is what's in
2,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is an old building.
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
Thanks, Raj. Any further discussion, trustees? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.
Enjoy your night.
You too.
Okay, and now? Yes, now we're on to the petition for traffic calming in Pleasant Street neighborhood. Thank you all for those of you in the public who are still here. We appreciate your patience. Could someone help to introduce this?
Sure.
So this is the petition for traffic calming in the Pleasant Street neighborhood and direct staff to work with the neighborhood on the traffic calming measures. And I think, Rick, you're here maybe to speak to this.
Yep,
Go
so
ahead.
in your packet, you have a petition from the residents of Pleasant Street, who, for the people who are on Teams, cannot see our audience. There's about 12-ish people in the audience, which is quite a crowd for to Lincoln. And so Pleasant Street is scheduled for resurfacing. You can all applaud that after all the years you've been waiting. It is scheduled for resurfacing from basically the westernmost edge of East and Pleasant all the way down to Mansfield, and little edges of Park Street there. And so again, it's resurfacing, and they have asked for the village to consider traffic calming measures. And I'm not sure if they have a spokesperson in the audience, but if they do, please come to the microphone, have a seat. Thanks for waiting.
Sure.
And full disclosure, I am a member of that neighborhood, but I did not sign that petition because I don't sign petitions.
You did not. There are people who want to leave the road unpaved because it is
Unpaved.
Yeah, because it slows traffic.
Oh, you mean just bumpy?
Bumpy.
Not gravel.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Okay, just to be clear, not gravel.
No,
just bumpy.
no, gravel. That would be interesting. Try to think of- Okay, if with your permission, I'd like to read the letter that we wrote that accompanied the signatures. And I'd prefer not to call it a petition. I don't think we did. It's more a letter of request and as part of our letter, we're asking the village to cooperate with us to develop a process whereby people can ask for these kinds of things. Crosswalk lights, all the things that you get petitioned for. If we had, several processes, safety asks, shall we say, it would be so much easier if we could do it that way. But this, because we don't, it kind of forces us to do it this way, which actually feels a little weird to me, to be honest. So here, I'll read the letter, and then if you have questions, I've also done a lot of research around the state. Many communities have these traffic calming measures applications on their websites, et cetera, et cetera. Some like Addison County has them. Bethel, Barry, Brattleboro, Danville, Williston. Burlington has a 32-page manual about traffic calming. Brattleboro has a 15-page, which is probably more our speed, and really delineates the kind of traffic calming and the kinds of requests you can make of the board. So I think that's the one we should probably use if we're going to use any. But here it goes. The residents of Pleasant Street and the adjoining neighborhood have long been concerned with speeding down Pleasant Street, since it's a well-known cut-through to avoid the five corners. A desirable neighborhood with Maple Street and ADL at one end and the town offices and EHS at the other, Pleasant Street is a convenient bypass to waiting at the community's largest intersection. As many will remember, starting in 2003, the neighborhood identified the need for traffic calming actions, and after much discussion, speed tables were established. They have proven minimally effective in slowing traffic. In light of this, we're asking for more effective traffic calming measures in our heavily trafficked neighborhood. Pleasant Street, including East and Mansfield, are used as shortcuts and are particularly affected by school traffic. The volume of residents, including children, passing through this neighborhood who walk and bike is astonishing. We are requesting a partnership where staff from the village could work with residents of high traffic impacted streets and neighborhoods to create a process that would be a model to other neighborhoods in the future. We envision a standard approach to evaluate and request traffic calming in an organized approach that ensures equity, safety, cost consideration, and efficiency. We believe forming a standardized process would benefit staff and residents alike for years to come. There is a perfect opportunity to create such a process as the Pleasant Street repaving project takes shape. As you can see in the attached signatures, there's considerable interest by residents in engaging in creating such a process, and we hope the village will share our enthusiasm. We have lots of creative ideas used in other communities for slowing traffic and would appreciate the opportunity to share. Such a discussion could serve as a model for other road projects to come, serving not just Pleasant Street, but the entire village. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and please see the attached letter signed by residents and neighbors of Pleasant Street as we look to a workable, permanent solution to the traffic calming needs of our community. And it's signed by Nick and Bridget. I'm Bridget Meyer. Nick is back there. But a lot, and 6 pages of signatures. So, what do you think?
Thank you.
What you think?
I think I agree with you that it's awkward about having a petition,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, some of us walk by your house on almost a multi-times a day basis.
Yeah.
So yes, wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that as a policy board, it's important for us to look at where our policies don't really make sense. And so I think we should have that conversation about how can we best engage the neighborhood with staff around traffic calming and not just the concept of a policy on speed tables.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, if I could suggest, we could partner with, you probably have some ideas about this too, but we could partner with Local Motion, other groups that are doing this. Burlington contracted with a Canadian firm to develop their plan, but and I think that for me anyway, especially during COVID, I was just amazed by the number of walkers on our street, walkers, wheelchairs, bikes, and it's astonishing. And what we need to do as a village, and maybe we can do it better when we're a city, is make these priorities. Do you know what I mean? Just run down these things that we want. What is a livable community? What makes a livable, healthy community? Definitely one of these things. And I copied Bike Walk and the police on this as well, so they could see what our concerns were and hopefully respond as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I don't, this isn't for traffic calming, but I know we have some kind of a policy. Maybe Rick could tell us about if someone wants one of those things that gauges people's speed and flashes them, and there's a few other things like that. And I'm not saying we have a policy, but I'm wondering where all that is and how that fits with, can you sort of expand and include this in there instead of starting from the ground up?
I can.
Yeah.
What is not traffic calming? It's important to clarify potential treatments that will not be considered as traffic calming measures. 4 common requests from residents include stop sign installation requests, speed radar equipment installation, driver safety education, or speed limit enforcement efforts by local police. While stop signs and other traffic control signs are means by which traffic operations may be managed, they're not traffic calming devices because they are not self-enforcing. A regulatory traffic control device, traffic control signs, obligate the motorist to alter their driving behavior and reduce speed, but require enforcement by authorities in order to be effective, rather than the operator's voluntary modification of their behavior. Vehicle safety education is an essential requirement for obtaining a state driver's license, but it's not in and of itself a traffic calming measure because it's not a physical treatment that is self-enforcing. For these reasons, requests of this nature will not be considered under the city's traffic calming program. This is both Brattleboro and Burlington.
George did a great job of setting that up for.
I love that you.
I know. I just felt that she was ready
said,
for
George
that.
is going to ask that.
I'm texting.
And you do understand that I mean a lot of there is the snowplow issue.
Oh yeah.
And Ricky Jones comes in and says that's a fantastic idea, but our snowplow would wipe that out in a heartbeat. So that is the wrinkle that we have here in the northern hemisphere.
I do understand that. I do. I really do. Some of the things we're talking about, at least on the street, maybe some of these other people could weigh in as well, are curb extensions, bump outs, maybe even putting big planters at the intersections and then pulling them up in the winter or something like that. Anything that will slow the traffic, particularly, at least my observation is during school time, school hours, it's particularly troublesome.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like for us to try and do is if we could try to not problem solve or design the street tonight or design the street calming tonight. I think we could all have fun doing it, but speaking for myself, I'm not really an expert in it.
Yep.
And I think that where we should really spend most of our time is looking at this example or examples from, say, Burlington, Brattleboro, and how can we help to incorporate that. But in the interim, how can staff best work with the neighborhood in ensuring that traffic calming is implemented? And Rick Hamlin, I think, if you wouldn't mind.
So, Bridget, your request actually.
Rick, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come to a mic because the people outside this room.
I'm gonna sit right next to you here.
Sorry,
side,
Rick,
side by side, just like in the
traffic calming battles.
Just battles, no, just like the neighbors that we are.
We are neighbors.
So the foundation of what you're asking for actually was laid in 2004, and there is a policy for requesting traffic calming, and there's tiers of steps of how that happens. And so step one is the community, anybody in the community can request a speed study to be done, because that's the first step, is to find out where is the level of the problem. Is it and in technical terms, we're talking about the 85th percentile. Is the 85th percentile speed equal to, less than the speed limit, or over the speed limit? And that's a key trigger for engineering. So because of your actions, the police have already started to record speeds on the street so we can identify that, which is the first step of the policy that was drafted by the trustees in 2004. And right now, just as some feedback for you, that policy is not findable anywhere on our website, and it would be good to get it there so that you would know that it was there and not have to create the first part of the process.
Yeah.
So that first process is speed study, and then once those numbers are back, then we can quantify what needs to happen. Under the current policy, I mean, there's actually another step before that. There was the 25 miles an hour in our neighborhood cones that could be requested. You're obviously looking for something beyond that.
Yes,
so we'll move ahead in the policy, which is the speed study. Once the speed study's back, now under that policy, there's essentially one traffic calming device that was approved in 2004. And that's speed tables, which sounds like you're not too interested in.
Yeah.
So really what has to happen is happening, which is the speed study. And then the next step of conversation is whether the trustees wish to alter the policy and kind of take it from 2004, bring it to 2021, knowing what we know now, which is a little more than we knew in 2004, and modify that policy, because as Bridget points out, it's the groundwork for not just Pleasant Street or just East Street or Arlington or Waverly or Park Place, Mansfield, but Iroquois, West, all of the, Brickyard, and all the greater and lesser streets within the village. And so the next part of the conversation, something that probably is worth thinking about now, is starting to take a look at that policy and revamping it if there's a will to do so. To look at other options. So, and we're studying the speed now, but we obviously know, and we all, I live around the corner, I'm on Mansfield, so hi neighbors. So we all know that, and I think probably the last issue was brought up in 2000,
beginning in 2003, I think, and that was, I think, the last time it was paved. It was when it became an issue because there was new pavement again.
Yeah.
And so we know that the speeds, especially if the speed tables are taken out and the new pavement goes down, we'll be doing the speed study again, which will also give us a comparison between rough surface and speed tables and smooth surface and no restriction. And most of the issues that or the solutions that might occur can occur after that pavement is placed. So it's not a question of waiting. And most of the things and the things that you've referred to can be installed after that pavement is put down. So process steps have started, and then it's a further conversation where if staff's directed to talk to you folks and start to craft provisions if the trustees feel it's warranted to the policy. So.
I would say absolutely, and with along the lines of the policy itself, I'd love for us to revisit that. I think one of the things the pandemic has taught us is about how many people do walk in our community. Along the similar lines, I think the policy around taking out sidewalks we may want to revisit, as that's not really conducive, especially given the reality that we're currently in. So yes, I think that from the trustees' perspective, we should revisit the policy. We should look into what other communities are doing around the state, nationally, internationally, for traffic calming, and how can we best integrate that and not rely on speed tables.
And I totally agree with the commentary that Bridget read. You know, stop signs are not to be used for speed control, and that's actually, you know, contrary to MUTCD, which is of course the guidelines that this state has adopted and we adopt for traffic control. And so those things don't equate to traffic calming, but there are other pieces that should work in conjunction. Passive, yes, but enforcement is important. Maybe, and again, you don't rely on just that one leg to support this, but it is an important part of the overall action to control speeds within the neighborhood. So, and I think the chief is on board with that also. But once the speed studies are back, then we have a great place to start our conversation.
And so, just real quick again, I want to make sure I heard correctly, as I thought I heard one of the concerns from some residents is about the current paving project and that possibly impeding the traffic calming. And that is not the case, where the current paving project, should that move forward, will not in any way hinder the future conversations around traffic calming.
Yeah, if there is disturbance of the pavement that's required to install something that's selected as an appropriate piece, the amount that's going to be disturbed is very minor compared to all of the tonnage, because it's Pleasant, Arlington, east between Pleasant and Arlington, Waverly and Park are all planned, that whole neighborhood, and so and to do a good job, it should be all done at the same time. So if there is disturbance to that pavement, it's minor. I wouldn't delay all of the paving because of a potential minor disturbance. So.
Can I just want to understand the process here, because it sounds like what you're asking for and what you folks are asking for is to participate in the policy-making process. You don't want us to make a policy and then say, here's your policy, and then here's how we think you fit into it. You want to participate with us.
Speaking personally for myself, I can't speak for the rest of the neighbors. That's what I would like. I would like to work with you to develop.
I think she's applying, so let's interview her right now for the bike walk.
Right.
All those in favor? No, Bridget, that's the only way you go.
All those in
Sorry, there's 2 open seats. If I
We've
remember
got
correctly.
seats for everybody.
All those in favor of Bridget being on the bike walk?
So quick,
Yeah.
maybe a quick. So, there is no curb work that I'm aware of in the area, right? So there's no concrete curb or granite curb. Everything is pavement and grassed parkway.
There is
For the most part.
Yeah, for 99.9%, there's a
Versus the crosswalks.
There's a trace of curbing near the intersection of Mansfield and Pleasant.
Yes, and I don't know why.
It's a remnant, and probably by the time we mill and pave, it may remain, but it's a remnant. There is no new curbing is going to be installed.
So any calming devices that are adjacent to the paved road is not going to interfere. It either is going to sit on it or be cut into it.
Correct.
And it's asphalt, so
Correct.
it's not.
Yeah, and very minor compared to the tonnage that's going to be put down in that area. Yeah.
I guess I'd say this is fantastic. Please include Bike Walk as much as possible. They've had 2 years ago, they had UVM students do a really interesting study on 3 different parts of the village. That's still out there. Often those UVM studies can be rather pie in the sky, but this one was more tame. Didn't call for any bridge building. And the other thing is, wasn't sure if I heard you correctly saying we should wait for the speed study before we revisit the policy. I think the policy is going to apply to the whole village, so we might as well just get. It's not going to be a fast process.
Can I interject too that the speed study, which I noticed today, they were doing something out there in the summer. Right now, I mean the road is rough. There isn't as much traffic as there is when during schools in session. So I was a little kind of like, oh no, this is never going to show what we need to show. But
it's baseline, and really this is the first step. Then do the paving, take the second set of readings, because it'll be informative to say, because we've got a combination actually of rough surface, which we know does slow people down, and the speed tables. But it'll be interesting to see what that difference is. Sure. And it's data, which it's good measurable information that we can use. So
I see Dan has a question.
Yeah. Can I make a comment? I'll wait for everyone else to talk, but anyways, the whole thing of traffic calming and the concerns of that community or that area in the community and speed, traffic calming, my concern or my question is it so much the speed or is it the number of vehicles, the size of vehicles that they're seeing a lot more of that due to traffic congestion at the 5 corners? Not as much, the speed might not be the big issue. It might be more just sheer number of volume, Rick, and all of you. And also speed, my experience in law enforcement, 35 years, when you're standing still on a roadway and you see a vehicle go by, it's a lot different than when you're actually monitoring it with the radar and you see the speed. It seems a lot faster when you're close to something than what it really might be. So speed studies will show that. But as far as traffic calming, the number of vehicles calming is basically opening up more arteries to relieve the pressure. And that's very difficult to do in a community like we have here, where we can't just build a new bypass.
Well, I would respond to suggest that you visit Burlington and see what they've done. They've done an extensive job all over that city of traffic calming. All the bump outs and all of the curb extensions that they've done, they have just done a fantastic job. And I'm not saying that we need to do that here. I'm just saying that in some neighborhoods, we will not be the last neighborhood who asks you for this. So for me anyway, developing a policy that you can easily access, to say, okay, we qualify, we don't qualify, who do we ask, how do we do this, is the right way to go, no matter what, no matter really what we decide to do on Pleasant Street and I mean we collectively decide to do on Pleasant Street for traffic calming.
I agree with that. And also, one other comment would be, I travel to Burlington every day, and there are a lot of one-way streets. One way to relieve traffic is to change the street designs and increase, but we have limited number of streets to utilize in the village. And it'd be very difficult to start redesigning the roads so that certain roads are one way and the other. It just makes it very confusing and difficult.
I hear you.
Go ahead, Raj.
Just the only other thing I'd say is thinking back to time on Bike Walk and some of the neighborhoods, I can't remember the street name, but there's a neighborhood that goes between the road that, well, it's late, the road that the wastewater treatment plant is on, and up to Cascade to West Street.
Yeah.
Just that neighborhood. The road has to be, I think, probably almost as wide as Pearl Street. Feels
Yeah.
like.
South
yeah.
view, 60
Big,
some
right.
feet.
So the land development code is being looked at again right now, monthly. And they meet at least once monthly.
Okay.
So the second prong of your discussion after this should really be to kind of go and engage with the planning commission and find out where this conversation fits in with how these things are decided when these projects go in.
All right.
Because that's going to be key, because they can't say no if regulation says that they can say yes. So if, really engage with them to figure out what's that step and what can we get into the code so that when they're approving projects, they can make those decisions. The developers know what they need to do, because right now we're really, there's not much left
Yeah.
to do to fill in. But
So for today's purposes, I certainly hear nothing but support for revisiting the policy, as well as for having staff work with the neighborhood now. As far as I'm concerned, if that process of working with the neighbors and neighborhood is the pilot to help create this policy, I'm fine with that. Let's try it, see how it goes.
Yeah.
Something that can help get that process started sooner rather than later. The other thing is just, as we heard earlier, thinking about the amount of work that this board is going to be doing with regards to independence. I also don't know about the time that we're going to have to do a really good job on that policy. And I just say that as a I guess a caution, caveat, whatever the right word is. Our bandwidth may be a little limited to really help that. So we may need your help in creating that. So this Brattleboro, Burlington model would be very helpful.
Good. And you have all these. Look at all these people. Look at them.
Oh, yeah.
Look at them.
I see many on my walks.
I know.
we're going to your house, people
Yes,
asking
of
to
course.
start.
Yeah.
Bridgetown right after this to get started.
Great.
Are there things that staff, you all need from us tonight to help get that process started?
No, if you'll authorize me to do that, I'll converse with my neighbor and start talking about the process for the process.
Yeah.
Would someone like to make the motion to authorize village engineer Rick Hamlin to speak with the neighborhood on this issue?
So moved. Okay, I'll second.
All right. Trustees, any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, that passed. Is there anything else, residents, that you wanted to make sure we heard? You've been here for a long time, and so please.
Come up here.
My name is Sarah Gibo, and I live in the Pleasant Street area. And I just want to I'm sure you guys will think of this, but as you're repaving these streets and then you're putting in these traffic calming measures, take into account drainage. We've had big issues with those speed tables. Mostly they're water dams. They don't really slow. I mean, it doesn't feel like you need to slow down going over them, but they block the water pretty bad, and there's big drop-offs around the edges where you can catch a bike tire when you're going around the corner, or your car tire, take out the front end. So that's all I want to say.
Okay.
Great. They can also be very icy when they freeze in the wintertime too.
Oh, yeah, the drainage is actually a pretty big hazard for the walkers too.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mr. Hamlin is all about drainage, if nothing else.
Nothing else. Good engineering.
We've had particularly in that area of the village. Yeah.
Was Nick?
I think as we, develop a policy, I think we also have to be open to some creative ideas, and we're seeing that around the state of what communities are doing for traffic calming. And I work a lot with Rick with tree issues in public works. And we've had these conversations as he enlightened me to the dreaded paving coming to Pleasant Street. And we've talked a lot about it, and he's open to trying some things in terms. And one of the possibilities is it might be a seasonal nature of what we're doing, of bump outs on one side of the street and then bump out on the other, but sort of framed by planters that could be done there that could be removed once the snow season starts. And that might be a way to start in on some of these ideas that wouldn't be a permanent fix and bring us some results. And I do want to say again what Bridget was saying, that the traffic counts are so different when school starts. And it is a combination of speed and volume, no doubt. So, look forward to figuring it out. Yeah.
Can I ask you just a quick clarifying question? Are you looking for a combination of solutions, or are you looking for calming? Because it's come up a lot, especially in Guag, in that neighborhood especially. We'd love to reduce volume too. And that's a I'm assuming, way more complicated conversation. And some of what the UVM study I mentioned was trying to tackle, like how could you envision rerouting a couple of different streets? I think they looked at West Street and might have looked at Pleasant or Mansfield as it goes into Brickyard. And at any rate, I'm just curious if you're looking more for strictly slowing people down, or you're looking for changing volume?
I don't know if we'll be able to change volume. I understand the constraints of our village. I think it is more that entering particular areas, maybe we do welcome to the signage at the beginning. This is the Pleasant Street neighborhood, please drive slow. And then create, because if you know Pleasant Street, it is a straight shot all the way down. There are no curves to it, so your line of sight is down. And if you can create some bump outs, temporary or not, changes your pattern, and you're more likely to slow down. So I'm thinking of those kinds of things that I'm seeing being done in other communities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hearing us. Yeah.
Can I get your name for the record?
Nick Meyer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other?
I'm Jen Ellis. I live on Lamoille Street, not on Pleasant Street. And I would just like to say that I keep hearing the thing about the plows and how speed bumps will slow the plows down. But honestly, I think the plows should slow down. They bomb down our streets. They bomb down Lamoille Street. They go too fast. And so that's one thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is that when I'm not making mittens, I'm out with my 6-year-old riding my bike around the block like 4 or 5 times a day. That's how I know all of my neighbors. And, I see all the time, it's Pleasant Street is a straight shot to the high school. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen high school students just bombing down Pleasant Street. A lot of times they're looking at their phones. And I agree with Nick, like we need to change that straight shot and make it something that people have to navigate. And if that means that traffic will choose a different path, like if that means the traffic will choose to either go through the 5 corners, which I understand we're trying to make into a 4 corners or something, like that's another problem that if we fix that, it might solve some of the problems of people choosing to drive through our little neighborhoods. But also traffic could go down to the Brickyard, where there's a traffic light and it's a much wider road and it is built for that kind of traffic. And so it would be really nice, I agree with what Bridget said about making a way to request these things, but I also think that it affects so many people besides the people on Pleasant Street and the people around that block. Like people from other blocks are walking there too. Last time I was here at one of these meetings, it was to request that Lamoille Street be paved. And I can say firsthand, first of all, thank you. That was gorgeous. Lamoille Street's wonderful. Everyone has roller skates now. It's great. However, the traffic on Lamoille Street the speed has increased a lot, especially with the development down at the end of Lamoille Street. We have more people going up and down our street, and they're going fast. And they're looking at their phones too, because again, Lamoille Street is a straight shot. I'm not asking for bump outs on Lamoille Street. People who don't live on Lamoille Street typically don't come down Lamoille Street. But Pleasant Street is like a freeway, and I want to see less people driving on it and people slowing down. And the only way to do that is to make it really inconvenient for them. And if that inconveniences the plows too, That's okay. You know, in Burlington and in many other towns in the Northeast, you know, there are these traffic calming measures and the plows navigate them. And so do the ambulances, and so do all the people, and it does slow people down. The speed table is useless. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'd like to see some pictures of the things, some of the traffic calming measures in Burlington. When you get around to it, as part of your feedback to us, I'd like to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, that has to be a part of it. I mean, just to describe what some of these, what is it really the best way to do that. So we'll start the conversation. All right. Cool.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around. I don't know. What do we have next?
You're on the Amtrak reopening celebration.
Amtrak reopening celebration.
Well, that was. Train's coming.
July 19th is going to be fun.
Train's coming.
Train's
coming. In all seriousness, George, Marguerite, Evan, do one of you want to just a little overview as to what's going on that day, or?
I'm happy to give an overview of what's going on, but I'm wondering if anyone has seen the most recent email we just got, where we were formally put on the Senator. Let me read it to you.
Huh?
We were put on the earmark list by Senator Leahy for $3 million.
Were we?
Yes, we were. Did you? I didn't know. This is like hot off the press kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's embargoed. You just
I was aware it might happen, but not that it did happen.
Yeah, it went from it's from Charlie Baker, and this says now what I'm not sure in reading this, I can't tell, and I didn't want to be rude and not listen to people, but I couldn't tell if this means we're just part of what Leahy is submitting for an earmark, but what that means, what's the next hoop? Is it a very low? Is it a little? We just step over it, or is it a 3-story hurdle? I'm not sure.
So for everybody, we asked Senator Leahy to put the Amtrak station on his list of projects for the Senate transportation bill. Amtrak has already received monies for ADA upgrades. So they were going to do the asphalt pad when you get on and off the train, and bathroom updates inside the station. We were talking about the outside multimodal part, and so we had a price figure of $3 million. So there is about 20 years ago, earmarks went away in the federal government. It was they claimed it was a bad thing, but they're back apparently now in this particular congressional session. And so we are in the next round of these, of our senators list. Now, interestingly, for geeks, Senator Leahy is the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is a good thing for Vermont and particularly for us, considering we have a project on his list. So we have not been kicked out of the process yet.
Right.
We are up against some very big projects, though,
right,
including 89.
Yeah. So I will go. That was a sort of a back end way of approaching what's the agenda item, which is next week there is a formal an event celebrating the reopening of Amtrak. The routes from Vermont into points south, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. And I think, technically speaking, I think Amtrak actually started up this week, because I know that because I heard it go by my house, and I'm pretty sure it was Amtrak, because I know that I've been listening to that train for a long time, and I know it's Amtrak. But the idea is that there is going to be an event with some some either of our federal representatives or the representatives of the representatives, representatives from VTrans, and local state representatives, and other assorted dignitaries are going to start on the train up in St. Albans, and that train will go down all the way to Brattleboro. And so we're going to use that as an opportunity to kind of celebrate the reopening and of Amtrak on this side of the state. This is the line that goes down the eastern side of the state and into Massachusetts and New York. And so we wanted to kind of use it as an event to, first of all, just celebrate the reopening of the train station. But second of all, we wanted to maybe attract some attention to the fact that this particular station, which is the busiest station in the state, it sees the most arrivals and departures of any Amtrak station in the state, is probably one of the most rundown and nasty looking stations in the state, has got that going for it. And we've been trying for a long time to get it fixed up. It's been a centerpiece of a lot of the things that we started when we started trying to fix up the train station. We got all those other things done, but this is the one piece that we didn't get done. And so we're trying to celebrate the reopening of Amtrak, but also hopefully raise the awareness from folks who are decision makers at state level and federal level of the really dire need for improving the accessibility and overall appearance of this station. It really needs some help. And the fact that we made it to the earmark list is really good news. And Andrew is village president, is going to give a little speech up in St. Albans, we think. Yep. And we are going to have an event here at the village. And I'm not sure of the time. Did we have the time figured out? And do you want to take it away from here, Andrew? Or?
You're doing a great job.
Okay. Yeah, take it away.
It's 9:44 on 29 Railroad Avenue.
Right.
Will be the arrival of the Amtrak Vermonter.
Right.
Thank you for that timing, Marguerite. But yes, and from there at 10 o'clock, there's going to start being other presentations. I forget exactly who it is that's going to be speaking. At this point, possibly thanking Senator Leahy and others, and then having a short walking tour of the village center, really being able to show what is and what will be. Having some, I believe, posters as well for the future of the train station and for the Crescent Connector as well.
We'll have some refreshments, a little bit of
there.
speechifying.
Yes.
Yes. And show some local dignitaries, including one of the things that we're trying to do is, because this starts in St. Albans and you take the train and there's really no return train trip except for 12 hours later.
No, we have to walk back up to St. Albans to get our cars.
Right. So the idea is that anybody who starts up in St. Albans, comes to Essex Junction, we will bring you back to St. Albans so that you're not waiting, but we will first give you a tour, show you what is going on in downtown Essex Junction and in our community. You get to stop and see the current condition of our Amtrak station in all of its non-glory.
It has some fresh graffiti on the plywood over the window. I noticed. It's just.
I am told they are considering replacing the window that has been broken. They were out there looking at it the other day, and so we were told that they were going to do it by the 19th. Okay, so, but that's the general gist, and we will have some refreshments. We have handouts, we have a press release, and hopefully, bless you, these stars will align in the federal process.
Yeah.
And we could be looking at an upgraded multimodal train station upgrade for Central Street and Railroad Street in the coming years.
Yes.
And just because the federal government gives you an earmark, what actually ends up happening, if I understand the process, is yes, you get an earmark, then it goes to a particular department of the federal government, who then tells you and whatever the rules and the timings and all that. And so it usually takes a bit before you actually get a go on what you're doing. But it is money. It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is a process, and it's. By the way, it's a rare.
Yeah. Well, we have the thing is, the exception is we have a very shovel-ready project. It's not like this is, we'd kind of like to think about what we want to do here. It's a very specific project. John Alden designed it, or helped design it, with some feedback from committee and other people. And so it's ready to go, which always helps, as I understand it, with these things, as opposed to someone wants to do something and it's a little vague. And when you really have a specific thing you want to accomplish.
You're not doing a study of whether you could do it, should do it, or not. And you don't have any endangered darter snails or.
Right, and there's no endangered anything over there. But the other thing is that it would also tie in with we're just talking about traffic, but part of it is that we also have a plan. There was also a plan once we get this upgraded where you would change the traffic flow around. So you would go back and it would be, you try to make it one way, Railroad Avenue and Ivy Lane, so there'd no longer be two-way traffic on Railroad Street.
And then the other thing is we want to highlight the goal of reestablishing the Vermonter to go to Montreal.
Right.
Which was approved like a decade ago again.
And they have immigration and border control issues, but that also Senator
train crossing over a border.
Senator Leahy has been very instrumental in trying to get some type of border control at the new Montreal station, so that train can be reestablished. And I think COVID, and I read some, I think COVID really highlighted how much tourism and traffic this area actually does with Canada. And so hopefully that will push this along, and this event hopefully gives us a few minutes to talk with those people who are decision makers.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
by the way, before we forget, Tammy Getchell, really doing
she did a great job with this.
A lot of work on this.
And mostly Greg Morgan. Greg Morgan is the person who really, sparked the whole thing and got all the ducks in a row and made us all do our job.
Robin Pierce as well.
Yes, Robin. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks to all of them.
Yes. Great. We good?
Yeah, so if people find themselves something want to do on Monday morning around 10 o'clock, we'll be on Railroad Street.
Yep. Hope to see you all there. Okay, so now we'll go back to our work session to go through the contract list. Although before we do that, what if we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, that's right.
Sound good? All right. So we will take a 5-minute recess to stretch. Amber, Dan, grab a coffee.
Coffee.
All right, we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Amber's coming.
I'm physically here. I'm not sure if I'm mentally here.
Oh, you are.
Oh, you're here.
Nope.
Think of it as CrossFit.
Dan?
Back.
Dan, all right. Evan ran out.
He said we could start.
All right, I will go ahead and call us back to order. So we are back at the work session regarding Essex Junction Independence, and we're going to Brad. Do you want to?
Yeah, if we could start on page 5, Marguerite, if you wouldn't mind scrolling there. So I think the first order of business is just to make sure that there's consensus among on the approach to the conversation with the select board about contracting services between the two municipalities. And so you can kind of see at the timeline, on June 8th, we left that meeting with you all saying, let's have a discussion with them to long-term contract police and recreation, short-term contract finance, clerk, treasurer, IT. The select board met on the 20th. They spoke in executive session. When they came out, they made a motion that said they were willing to have a conversation about long-term contracting police, short-term finance, clerk, treasurer, IT, rec, and parks. and they wanted to add assessing to the mix, and it wasn't clear if that was for a long or a short term, at least in the correspondence. And then you all met the next night, and we left that meeting, I believe, saying let's long-term share police, short-term finance, and we put a date as to the longest that could be, and still thinking short-term IT, and then wanting to add senior services and tree farm to the discussion, and you were willing to talk to the select board about what they were thinking about assessing. That's kind of where we left, is my recollection of things. There's some information here, just met, since the last meeting with 2 different IT contractors. It seems like there's several different options in the area. It feels to me like that we can find an IT contract that will suffice our needs, certainly, that, we've talked about having that 30,000 square foot view and making sure that they're factoring in all of the different things, our needs, and looking at a 5-10 year plan out, while also providing day-to-day IT tech support. I think a contracting route is probably going to be a better route for the village, or for the city, I don't think there's a need for a multi-person IT department, and with one person, we've talked about the challenges that if they're out for any reason, then there's no backup or support. And both contractors had no problem saying that this could be stood up for day one. So my recommendation is to not pursue a contract with the select board for IT services.
So you're asking us to really look at that list of the police, finance, IT, recreation, parks, as far as senior services and the tree farm, and assessing and confirming or not.
Yeah, if that 621 list is still where there's been movement.
Yep. I think we've all been clear on police. I think we all were okay with finance up to that June 30th, 2026. As far as IT goes, we haven't had a unanimous agreement on this. Based on what Brad is saying, would we be okay not sharing IT with the trustees and instead, you know what I mean, not sharing IT with the select board or the town, and instead contracting out for these services with a professional entity? I know I, for one, am A-okay with that.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm fine either way. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other about this, about IT. I've got strong feelings about some of the others, but.
Amber or Dan?
I don't have a problem with us contracting that out. I think it's something that we might find some savings.
Amber? I think you're talking, but you're muted.
Well, it is 10:15 at night. Come on. So yes, I agree. Let's contract it out.
Okay. So it sounds like we're good at contracting that out. With the specific services with regards to seniors and the tree farm, I think we were unanimous on that earlier.
Can we revisit what we were unanimous on?
The willingness to share for the long-term senior services and the tree farm.
Yeah, good.
Mr. President, the senior services, would that also include senior van?
So when I'm saying senior services, I'm thinking the center and van. Trustees, would you all agree with that same understanding?
I think I see it as one piece. I really do. I know, as we heard here tonight, people are very passionate. Our seniors don't care whether they live in, I don't care whether they live in the village or the town in terms of that particular issue. And I think we should try to work with the select board in maintaining the entire network and as much as we can, as long as it's reasonable to do. And that includes the van as well as the center.
Also, just in that note for the senior center, there's like tons from Williston.
Yep.
You know, if you actually look at the numbers. it
Oh,
serves-
I know,
Yeah,
I know, but
No, yes.
I'm not gonna get picky about where they come
Yeah,
from.
exactly. That's my point. I
Right.
guess
Yeah.
you can add that.
Also are more likely to be able to expand services that way and leverage the size. I mean, we are looking at most likely having to expand that at some.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
trying to be,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
clarifying.
No, it's great.
Okay, great.
Appreciate that. Anybody feel differently? Okay.
So, am I reading this right? It says additionally recreation. That's not rec and parks. It's just those particular services, right?
Those two
Okay.
services.
All right, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Getting late.
The willingness to discuss with the select board about assessing. I had a conversation with Andy after that meeting, and what he was saying is that it was sort of like an olive branch of uncertainty as to whether we would be able to have our own, given the difficulty that I guess the town went through in trying to find an assessor. And so that was sort of an olive branch of, if you want one, hey, we can share it. Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion.
I personally think we should, I would share the assessor for all kinds of reasons. I think you have an office and entity that's already familiar with the village and all of the properties here.
Mhm.
I think you'd be losing a lot of institutional knowledge. I think it's an economy of scale that would benefit us as well as the town. So, I think it'd be. Yeah, I think it'd be hard to do just on have a consultant and just a part-time. I think it's really kind of I don't want to say a full-time job, but it's more than a part-time job. It's one of those sort of in-between things. It's more than part-time, and but you wouldn't, if we each had to have our own full-time, there wouldn't probably be enough work for that. So I think it's an economy of scale kind of thing in my mind, but maybe not.
For me, I've said no on this, and it's not my top priority, but it's also not the mountain I'm going to die on.
Okay.
I think of Vermont having 251 towns, municipalities in the state. Everybody has to do assessing. So whether it be the tiny towns of Calais, Groton, what have you, they're assessing. So whether it's an 11,000 population city village, whether it's 60,000 or 40,000 population Burlington, whether it's the entire town of Essex, everybody's doing it, and so regardless of size.
Yes, and I don't think this is the time to get into, but I think there's assessing and then there's assessing. I think assessing, for example, Global Foundries, is different than assessing a property on a residential property, and I think it can be a complex project to take on, and a new business opens up somewhere, anywhere. Getting an accurate assessment, and particularly if that business contests it, and so it in a growing, developing area, I think it can be a different issue than in other parts of the state. Uh-oh, did we lose that? I will defer to others.
It's Amber, Dan, any strong opinions?
We may not get them.
I'm pro keeping it and sharing it with.
Went off. So if you're talking, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. All right, we're back.
Well, I'll just say it again. I support the idea of continuing to share the assessor services with the town.
Thank you, Dan. Amber?
I don't have any real strong input on it, I guess.
Okay. Sounds like a lukewarm sure. That's what I'm taking from this.
I mean, if you want.
The way I guess is, the select board had asked for us, or Andy had asked for us, if we could create proposals to start this conversation. Unless I'm wrong, I'm not hearing a really strong, yes, we really want to do this. Do we want to counter and say, hey, if you want to, let us know what you're thinking.
Sure.
We can dedicate our efforts to something else.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they would like to do it because it takes some financial pressure off them for the position. And
maybe.
If it works out, it works out.
Okay. So maybe ask them to come up with a proposal and to start that conversation?
Sure. Nobody asked us to do it.
Back and forth.
Yep.
Did I miss anything there, Brad?
Nope, that's everything that we've talked about, and I assume everything else that's not on this list is continuing to remain off this list, that nothing has jumped back on. So that's good. I think there's some good clarity, and you know, it just creates a real clear path for us for next Monday.
Okay.
So the next part of the conversation is, you know, consideration of other contracts that are desired or necessary, either for the transitional period, the transition year of the new city, or, you know, settling on some things with the town. We've talked about some of these things in the past. You know, we have, there's funds, there's assets, there's certainly in the transition, you know, in that first year, we've written in the transitional provisions that you'll continue with consolidated services for that year, and so you would want to have a contract that acknowledges that you've not only put that in your transitional plan, but also that they've signed off that they're willing to continue to collect taxes for the first year of the city being formed, and so there's a variety of matters like that. We haven't really. You all haven't talked about them or even what should be on that list. So it's up to you. We could start to run down that list now in open session, or we could go into executive session to talk about what do you want on the list and what you're looking for in those contracts. And then we could get that, you know, some bare bones language over to the select board in advance of the meeting for next week.
I've talked first a lot. Go ahead, Raj.
You're the boss. No, I was just trying to stay away. I'm just, in my head, I'm just trying to decide whether I'm comfortable with doing it out in the open or executive session.
So I'll go. I'd say we've done this in open so far. I think that's whether we, I think we stick with that process. At some point in time, we need the select board to hear what it is that we want. And I think by doing it in open session now, it gives them more time to think and process and absorb whatever it is that we finally come to terms with. Plus, at the same time, people in the residents in the community will be able to start providing feedback to the select board and trustees at that point, where if what we're saying is not something that they want and or is something they agree with, we can start that public input process collection now as compared to waiting for that joint meeting next week. So I think in my mind, it helps to expedite the process. And again, going back to building trust, I'd be fine with it.
I'm just not, I have to say, it's not the late hour. It's just, I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is we're talking about here. That's my problem about doing it in open session, because it's not so much I'm trying to cover something up. I just don't want to sound stupid.
Yep.
And I'm not really totally sure what's within the parentheses here that we'd be discussing.
So things like assets.
Okay.
Money. The very specific details of who pays for what, how that should be determined, for how long. We received an email from Brad today. Is that when that was? With an attachment of contracts list. If you open that up and just take a look at the first couple of items, that can give you an idea as to what we're thinking. We can play some Jeopardy music while that happens.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Want me to pull it up or not?
Nope. Thank you.
Andrew,
Ew.
wasn't one of the issues also as far as the property within the village, such as 81 Main Street, taxation and anything based on that? Just to comment on that subject, growing up in Montpelier, state of Vermont does not pay property taxes to the city of Montpelier. So the city of Montpelier receives in lieu of tax amount of money. I don't know what that amount of money is, but maybe that's something we could discuss with the select board. But I would say I'll weigh in on it.
you were spot on into the types of topics that we would be discussing.
Yes.
And so the question is, are we okay doing that now in open session or going into executive session?
I think it's going to be depending on the topic itself, it's going to be highly debatable, and it's going to take a while. I mean, just this alone, discussing how much money, if we're, depending if they want to go down that road of payment in lieu of taxes, such as, kind of like what CVE does to the village, but different. Anyways, that can be drawn out for quite a long time. I mean, we'd be into the wee hours of the morning.
That's why we should figure out how to talk about it now.
Okay.
You want to start?
I still don't know whether everybody wants to do this in open or in executive session.
I think there are some, in my mind, to be going through this list in particular. I'm going to be blunt and say I see a few things that I would prefer, at least initially, to discuss in executive session. They might involve personnel. And so I think I'd be more comfortable talking. And since I'm really kind of just absorbing a lot of this now, instead of exploring things and then saying, oh boy, we can't talk about, I think there's some issues here that I think are pretty, in my mind, could be very solidly in the middle of executive session. That's just my opinion.
Amber, Dan, Raj?
Yeah, I'm for going to executive session to discuss some of these matters. I mean, as George was saying, there's some issues that may involve personnel and
it's not. In my feeling, it's not like we're trying to like play poker or not show our hand. I've just got a lot of uncertainty about some of these issues here, and I'd rather err on the side of caution. I'm not trying to, keep things close to my vest relative to the select board. It's just, I'm just not sure about some of these things, if we can talk about some of these issues in open session.
Sure. Amber, Raj, you good with that?
Sure.
Okay. So then, why don't we, because that would be the last thing that we have. If the board is okay, we also have an executive session to discuss public employee. So why don't we go to the consent agenda and do that, go through the reading file, then we'll have our executive sessions and adjourn after that.
Okay.
Sound good?
Motion for the consent agenda.
Sweet.
I'll
second.
Well, give it to Dan.
Whoever wanted to take. Dan got that one. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. With the reading file, we had a lot. Please take a look. Board member comments, 10:25 at night, anything?
I just wanted to say kudos.
Not that I'm trying to direct in any particular direction here.
You weren't trying to bias the.
I'd like to discuss.
I will jump over there. Great. So, in all seriousness, though, is there something that somebody does want to discuss?
No, I just said kudos to the library, but it probably got lost in everybody laughing.
Oh,
yeah, that was very cool.
Thank you, Amber, for that.
Yep.
Staff, anything you wanted to add that we haven't? Okay, I'm just trying to find the executive session motions. The one for
This for Brad.
Here's the one for the town for what we're talking about just now.
So there we go. So the one for the conversations with the select board, It says to include the trustees, assistant manager, and the recreation director. Evan, do you want to be in on this?
It's your choice.
If you feel that you're
It's your choice.
our manager, I'm fine with it. I'd say if at any point in time you're uncomfortable in your professional judgment as a professional.
I can
Okay.
always step up.
Okay. 120 for the first one. The second one,
166.
Sweet. So I move to find that the premature general public knowledge regarding the village's contracts with the town of Essex and the future city of Essex Junction would clearly place the village at a substantial disadvantage because the village risks disclosing in its negotiation strategy if it discusses the proposed contract and terms in public. That's my motion.
Second.
Thank you, Raj. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. Motion 2, I move that the trustees enter into executive session to discuss contracts with the town of Essex and the future city of Essex Junction in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A1A to include the trustees, assistant manager, Essex Junction Recreation Parks director, and unified municipal manager.
Second.
Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, one last one. I move that the Village Board of Trustees enter into executive session to discuss the employment of a public employee in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A3 to include the unified manager of and teach.
Second.
Any further discussion on that motion?
You know, so might as well.
You okay? So friendly amendment, are you
Friendly
okay adding Marguerite and Brad?
Yes.
Official titles are in here.
Yes.
Great.
As long as, is Brad appropriate to be in there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He knows.
Yep,
He
okay.
knows.
All right.
He will know what it's about.
All right.
All those, you have the second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. So we'll go into the offices.
Yep.
You don't need to stick around. We won't be coming back to, so, we do. For,
We'll get you the motion.
before like ending
Okay.
executive
Oh,
session,
the
and
ending ones,
yeah,
yeah,
we'll
that
get
would
that
be
out to you.
great.
So we're going into.
Amber, Dan, if you can go to the executive session link, we'll virtually see you on the other side.
Okay.